capital, Tehran. Haniya was there to attend the installation of Iran's new president. Iran's supreme leader is vowing retaliation. And NPR's James Hyder says that after Haniya's death, not much will change in the Gaza conflict.
In terms of the war in Gaza right now, Haniya was a political leader living in exile. The actual war on the ground is being directed by Hamas's military commander inside Gaza, and that's Yahya Sinwar, and he appears determined to keep on fighting. So there's probably not much going to change on the ground right now, but there's the danger that it could get much worse.
NPR's James Hyder reporting. The assassination came hours after Israel struck a building in Beirut, Lebanon. The Israeli government says that killed a top leader of Hezbollah, whom they say is responsible for a rocket attack last weekend. That attack hit the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, killing 12 children. Hezbollah had denied responsibility for the rocket attack. Former President Donald Trump will be campaigning in Illinois and Pennsylvania today. As NPR's Windsor Johnston reports, Trump is scheduled to speak to the annual convention of the National Association of Black Journalists in Chicago.
Trump's scheduled appearance at the annual convention has prompted at least one high-profile member of the Black journalist group to step down as co-chair. Some members argue that the event could serve as a platform for Trump to make false claims or be seen as winning an endorsement from the group. In a statement, the NABJ says while it does not endorse political candidates as a journalism organization, it welcomes the opportunity for members, quote, to ask the tough questions that Black Americans want and need to know. A source tells NPR that Vice President Kamala Harris will not attend the convention for scheduling reasons and says the organization turned down an offer for her to appear virtually. Windsor Johnston, NPR News.
CBS Evening News anchor Norah O'Donnell has announced plans to step down from the newscast after the fall elections. As NPR's David Folkenflik reports, she's held the role for 5 years.
In sharing the news with colleagues, O'Donnell cited the relentless nature of the job. She was previously host of CBS's morning news show and a top White House reporter. She says she signed a long-term contract to continue doing major interviews for CBS shows, including 60 Minutes. O'Donnell's departure speaks to a devaluation of the anchor role at many TV news outlets. The morning show hosts make more money for the broadcast networks. At cable networks, Fox and MSNBC, the opinion hosts define the channels, not the news anchors. And yet, the broadcast network evening newscasts are still among the largest draws in all of TV news, though the top-rated show remains CBS's 60 Minutes, where O'Donnell will continue to be seen. David Folkenflik, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Starting tomorrow, Tap to Pay comes to the MBTA. All buses, Green Line trolleys, Mattapan Line trolleys, and at all gated subway stations will start accepting payment technology using a smartwatch, phone, a chipped credit or debit card. GBH's Mark Hers has more details.
The new readers look like small iPads. You just hold your card, watch, or phone to them, wait for the green check mark, and off you go. A couple things to look out for. Charlie card readers are still separate. If you try and tap yours at the new readers, you'll have no luck. Also, the T is warning riders to not stand too close to the new readers when on the bus or those lines that have them. You could actually get accidentally charged. No word yet on when other subway lines may get them, but definitely for some, this could be a game-changing convenience. In Boston, I'm Mark Hers, GBH News 89.7.
Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer on the Vineyard over the weekend, giving a talk about her new memoir, True Gretch. The Vineyard Gazette reports that Whitmer is co-chair of Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. She was previously rumored to be in the running for Harris's pick for VP, but she has since said that she would remain governor of Michigan until the end of her term in 2026. Actors Ted Danson and his wife Mary Steenburgen moderated Whitmer's sold-out talk, which was part of the Martha's Vineyard Book Festival. In sports, Red Sox Mariners wrap up their series at Fenway this afternoon. That's a 4:10 start. It's 82 degrees in Boston. We've got some rain in the area. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Amazon Business, committed to being a digital purchasing solution for businesses so that growing the business is the main focus and not admin and paperwork. Learn about smart business buying at amazonbusiness.com.
Rowdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming, thank you, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. We will be back here on Friday with live music from the Silk Road Ensemble. It's going to be spectacular, Jim. And on Tuesday from 11 to 12, Michelle Wu, the mayor of the city of Boston, will be here with us from 11 to 12 at the Boston Public Library. And she is expecting her third child. We're very excited about that. Right now, actually not right now because she isn't here yet, but any moment now, Jim, we're going to be joined by Governor Maura Healey here for a full hour, taking our questions and your questions. Hello, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. And you can call now or text now, 877-301-8097. The governor's pulling up. And by the way, I've been working with you 25 years. I would like to say before the governor gets here, I've never, ever seen your papers.
I'm very organized.
Displayed in such an organized fashion.
Well, that's because...
Can people see? Can we get a camera on that? We do have a camera on this.
A million topics for the mayor. Or for the
Can
governor,
we hear it from Marjorie Egan and being actually prepared,
I'm prepared
and organized? That's
I'm
a very
ready.
Tepid response,
I'm ready.
but thank you.
Yeah,
anyway.
Maybe she has something to say about the Olympics last night. Did you see the Olympics last night?
I did not.
Simone Biles.
She's fabulous.
Getting the gold medal yet again.
You know who was at the Olympics? Our guest
Juliette
at 12:30.
I'm going to ask her all
Kayyem.
about that. But there was a lot of criticism for the part that Juliette was involved with. That was the initial road down the Seine River by all the boats. Is it Seine or Seine?
Seine.
Seine River.
So in any case, what we're going to do, the governor is apparently a minute away. If she isn't here in a minute, we will answer questions on her behalf. And she'll be bound by whatever it is we say. That's part of the rules we have with Governor Healey. She's here on time. Again, well, the lines are full, but you can text. Oh, wait, forgot to say Hannah. Hello, Hannah. Hannah, raise your hand. Hannah's our colleague, Adriana, too, with her there. If you have a question you'd like to ask the governor face-to-face, you go over to the two of them, and they will sort of vet your question. And if it's borderline reasonable, there's a decent chance you get to ask it directly to Maura Healey.
Now, since you spent a lot of time scurrying about up there on Beacon Hill,
I do.
How much more time does the legislature have to get things done up there?
Well, today is the last day of the session. And the last day of the session. And they may extend it a little bit, but I think, in fairness, I think you've been really unfair about this. They need a 5-month vacation. Especially since virtually none of them have opponents, by the way.
What is the most pressing issue in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts right now?
Housing.
Housing. How's the housing bill doing up there in the legislature?
Pending.
It's pending.
How about economic development?
That's also pending.
How about safe consumption sites?
That's pending too. I mean,
how about Boston liquor licenses?
Boston liquor licenses.
Pending.
I think. Oh, I thought they did.
No,
something
House
on
and
that.
Senate have different versions. How about the climate bill, Marjorie?
That's pending too.
Pending. That is exactly right.
Having
said that, in fairness, and I'm sure the governor is going to say this to us, assuming she shows up in a minute here, is they've done a lot of. She signed a lot of decent things into law. On the gun front, it's hard to believe in a state with gun laws that are this tough. There were advances, but there were advances that were made. Some good things in the budget.
Let me ask
so there are
you
a lot of good
Jim.
things to talk about.
If you didn't finish what you're supposed to finish by the deadline, what would happen in your job?
Honestly, I'd go on a 5-month vacation. It's in my contract. If you don't finish what you're doing, Jim, you go on a 5-month vacation as soon as, oops. Hello there, Governor Healey. How are you? We're joined now by the governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. Hello, Governor. Nice to see you.
Hello,
nice
Governor.
To see you.
How are you?
Are you rocking your JD Vance?
What do you think of this, by the way?
I don't know. I'm startled. I missed you last month, so.
You did?
I believe
you weren't here.
Was Jim on vacation?
No, she wasn't here.
Oh, you weren't here. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought
I wasn't
missed
on
something.
vacation.
I think you're avoiding the question, Governor.
governor.
That's fine.
I think it looks great.
Yeah?
Beards are.
Well, I like your necklace
Well,
then,
thank
if
you.
that's
I
the
think
case.
it looks
Okay.
great. Do you have a lot of beard? Do you do the beard product?
I do some things.
The-
That's
the
rather
grooming?
personal, but yes, I do
There's
some
been-
of
We
those
have that
things.
kind of relationship.
I think we
It's
do,
okay,
yes.
Jim.
It's good to see you, Governor Healey.
Good
Thanks
to
for being
see you.
And by the way, if you want to talk to the governor, again, it's 877-301-8970. Lines are full, but you can text or go see Hannah or Adriana over there.
Well, I was home.
And nice to see you, Marjorie.
Nice to see you as well,
Great.
Governor Healey. I was home my exciting night life watching cable news. It's very exciting in my house on the evenings during the week. And I saw you on cable news talking about Kamala Harris. And you had an overlap
Excited.
as Attorney General. So tell us something that we may not know about her or what your interactions were when you were both AGs.
Well, I overlapped with her for a couple of years. We were both attorneys general. But of course, I worked in the AG's office, and Massachusetts worked a lot with California, so I actually worked with her, extensively during the 5 years before that. Look, she's fantastic, and I think she's just like hit it out of the park in the last week since since announcing, and record fundraising, $200 million, record voter registration, the way she's been able to unify the party, right? The enthusiasm, right? The palpable
wild.
enthusiasm, especially renewed interest among young people. But Kamala Harris is a really warm, down-to-earth person, and I remember when I first walked into the big room with all the other AGs. I was recently elected, and she was so warm to me because I was still one of the few women in the room. And I just appreciate, she always was like, here's my cell, call me anytime.
Wow.
Welcome, I'm here for you, and you got this, and you got this. And I appreciated that. I appreciated her warmth. I told the story about being in P-Town with her, God, it feels like 3 months ago, but it was only, 8 days ago? It was
For
the
the
day
fundraiser,
before
yeah.
the president.
That's right.
The president announced that he wasn't going to continue with the nomination. And she was there. It was a big event, lots of enthusiasm. And, I told the story about this little girl backstage to say hello to her. Joanna and I did. And the little girl was so excited to meet her. And Kamala made that little girl feel like she was the only one in the room, and asked her about camp, asked her what she was doing. And she told the story. And the little girl says, like, I'm playing basketball, and Kamala asks her what position she plays, and she's like, well, I don't. The one thing I don't like to do is play defense. and the vice president says back to her, I like offense too. Me too. I like offense. So she gave her a big hug, and it was really cute. And that's who Kamala Harris is. She's very warm. And the other thing is, she cares a lot about people. That's why you become a district attorney. That's why you become an attorney general, right? You're driven to support and find ways to help everyday, ordinary Americans. And I saw that as AG, working together with her, going after predatory lenders, going after, the entities that ripped off homeowners during the subprime lending crisis. She was the lead AG during that time. So she's a person of tremendous seriousness and substance. She's prosecuted, human traffickers, fraudsters, and she's just a really, she gets it. That's why it couldn't be more clear in this race. You've got somebody who is all about himself, and you've got somebody who has been and dedicated her career in public service to fighting for ordinary Americans.
So a couple of more national questions, then we're going to get to callers and emailers and some people here. It was reported that you on a call with Democratic governors and the chief of staff for the president said that the Biden campaign was irretrievable after that debate. One, is that true? And two, what kind of reaction did you get from the chief of staff and your fellow governors?
Well, that was a private conversation, and I wasn't intending for it to be public. But,
Did you say it?
Oh, I did say it. But, look, I have said all along, I have tremendous regard and respect for President Biden. I mean, we continue to be the beneficiary of the incredible efforts of the Biden-Harris administration, the legislation that's been passed the last 3 years. I mean, what he's been able to do, unbelievable. And right now, we're counting over $7 billion that our state, I was able to go out with our team and apply for and receive funding from the federal government and from the Biden-Harris team. So I really appreciate the work done there. I also believe that, this was the right, given where the polls were, given what was happening, particularly in the battleground states, for whatever reason, there needed to be a change, and we're the race is on now. But in terms of reaction, there was no, there's no blowback or anything. I think that it wasn't like I was the only one saying that. And again, I say that as somebody who has been strongly supportive of President Biden. You know what I told him when I was at the White House a couple weeks ago? I said to him he was a hero to me, not only for what he did in 2020, stepping up, running, saving democracy, the person who could beat Donald Trump and did. I said, Mr. President, you're a hero to me starting in May of 2012, because you were the one who went on national TV and said that gay people should be allowed to marry. And at the time, I was a lawyer in the Attorney General's office. I'd sued the then Obama administration to challenge the Defense of Marriage Act. We were in court. We were in court. So that was a big deal, because ultimately what happened, Joe Biden says that, President Obama then, instead of defending DOMA, comes around and says we're going to join in fighting DOMA. And, that's just who Joe Biden is.
One last national political question. Marjorie and I were talking about you this morning. Is it fair to say you're a childless cat lady, Governor? Is that no? I mean, it is fair, is it not, or is it?
Well, our stepchildren would disagree with that.
Oh, okay.
And our teenager at home would disagree with that, and call it cringe, among many things that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump say. But I mean, here's also what's so wrong about that comment. First of all, I mean, as many have said, don't judge, and you don't know the half of things. You don't know what the circumstance is. And also, more than that, who are you to say what brings a woman fulfillment, right? I mean, these are the same misogynist, sexist tropes that you hear. To go after and attack women, I mean, that's what's going on here, right? He would never say that about a man. So not only is it a ridiculous and cruel and just disgusting comment, it's also like really serious, because what it actually speaks to underlying all of this is like the degree of misogyny and sexism that both J.D. Vance and Donald Trump have for women. That's what's going on here. And you put that alongside all the things they want to do that are going to harm women. Overturning Roe, Donald Trump's still bragging about that accomplishment. And as a result today, women's health and lives are at risk in places around this country. And you could just go right down through the list of all the things that they're going to do, Project 2025, to hurt women, to hurt families. That's the irony, too. They want to be all pro-family. That is a bunch of BS, because it's the Biden-Harris administration, it's the Democrats who are there making sure that children and families in this country are supported. So, that's to me what that comment is about, and why it's so, it's cringe, but it's more than that. It's dangerous, and people have really got to be attuned to that.
Why don't we go to the mic here in the studio with Ariana and Hannah. Marilyn is at the BPL mic. Marilyn, where are you? You got to move quickly, Marilyn. My apologies. In the interim, while Marilyn's walking up, we'll go to River in Linfield. You're on with the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. Hi, River.
Hi, River. Hi, this is River from Linfield. How are you? Thank you so much. I am wondering if you would be willing to support a bill to remove the charitable immunity cap in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is one of the few states that still practices some sort of charitable immunity cap, and it's $20,000. I'm wondering if you would be willing to support the removal of this in the case of sexual abuse to hold institutions like the Catholic Church, Boy Scouts, and hospitals that are all worth hundreds of millions of dollars accountable, and to create a sense of accountability within these.
Yeah, River, let me say this. I think that we need to be doing all that we can for victims and survivors of sexual assault, sexual trauma. That's what you're speaking to. So I haven't seen what's been proposed there, but I'm happy to take a look. It is very important to me, as a former prosecutor and a former attorney general who actually prosecuted those kinds of cases, to make sure that victims have access to the remedies and the relief that they need.
River, thanks for the call. Marilyn is at the BPL mic. Marilyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having the question. Kearney Hospital will close. So what are we going to do with it? Well, my suggestion, because my community, and I've grown up there, is used to having hospitals, ambulances, and so forth. Can we, and what I see in the real world is the people who need dialysis are traveling farther than they need to be. Can we make that into a huge dialysis center to help these people? And then the old emergency room, turn that into one of these little, like down the street, you can urgent care to take care of little immediate means, and keep it still being a huge medical center that we're all used to having there all the time, and help the people waiting for a transplant.
Yeah.
Marilyn, thank you.
Marilyn, thank you. And, I feel terrible about what's happening in places like Kearney, up in the Merrimack Valley with Neshoba. We're here in this situation, all of us, you in the neighborhood and the community, us as a state, because of the greed of Stewart, right? That Stewart just, drove these hospitals into the ground with greed, with mismanagement, and we're all left, right, trying to pick up the pieces. Here's what we are focused on, Marilyn, okay? stewards come in and they've said, we're closing Kearney, we're closing Neshoba. Right now, as we speak, my team, we're very focused on how do we keep the other 5 hospitals open, how do we transition them to responsible hospital ownership, and what do we do to keep Kearney and Neshoba open. I continue to press on Stewart to keep them open for 120 days while we sort out where patients will go, where healthcare workers will go. And also, to your point, Marilyn, the bigger question and picture is what becomes of these facilities, because there are important needs in communities, whether you speak of dialysis or urgent care, behavioral health, which we know is a need around. We are going to focus on how do we best use these facilities and serve community. But again, I just am disgusted that we're in this situation. We're working really hard to have the kind of transition and to put us in the best position when it comes to making sure that people can access the care that they need.
But there's nothing the state can do to keep them open beyond that 120 days potentially.
It's Stewart. It's their decision. They close it. They've run out of money. I mean, we've been doing what we can to continue to fund things and to continue to help with operations while we're on site. We're on site at all these hospitals monitoring for safety. So, we continue to do that. We're in touch with labor. We're in touch with community leaders. We're in touch with our community health centers. We're in the bankruptcy proceeding right now and in a mediation. There is a deal on the table, and we need the lenders in New York to step up and accept the deal and make this happen. The leases that are exorbitant, there's $9 billion of lease income. $9 billion, right? It's terrible the way this whole thing was set up and structured. We need those leases broken, reduced down, and we've got, we think, operators who are responsible, who would be able to come in and take over, but we need the lenders to put greed aside and get that done. Thank you, Marilyn, for coming in today, and I really hope we can get to a better place for your neighborhood.
Marilyn, thank you. Governor Healey, you went further as Attorney General with the murderous Sackler family than any Attorney General in America. You went after them in their personal capacity in terms of civil proceedings. Mm-hmm. We talked at that time about possible criminal proceedings. I still don't understand. We've talked to you about this before, but I wanted to say it again. There was a story in the Globe about a 39-year-old woman who died at a Stewart hospital. I think it was St. Elizabeth's, I'm not sure.
St. Elizabeth's.
And
no, she was moved. She was moved to a Boston Medical Center, I believe, but she died after being moved out because they didn't have the equipment.
The experts said that had an embolism coil, which had been repossessed, not been repossessed, that she would have survived. And we know at the same time that was repossessed for failure to pay. We know what dilatory the CEO was taking in millions of dollars for yachts and planes and whatever. Why is that not on its face, not a criminal offense? Should he be criminally prosecuted?
Well, I don't know all the facts here. I know that our Department of Public Health still has an ongoing investigation, but whether a DA or an AG or a U.S. Attorney's Office might take action, I don't know. It depends on what the facts are. I know you're dealing with sick people, right, who are presenting with all sorts of underlying complications and, what that ultimately looked like. Of course, it's terrible. It was terrible that they didn't have that coil there, right? I mean, that is why, Jim, we are on site right now monitoring and have been through the Department of Public Health. But let's see for another day, what comes of that. And, it's not any mystery. I mean, Ralph Dillatore and Stewart are the subject of investigations right now.
We're talking to the Governor of the Commonwealth, and you can talk to her at 877-301-8970.
Before we get back to the calls, I know you want to talk about some of the bills you've signed up with the legislature. So let's talk about what you've done before we get to what is left undone. What have you done?
Well, the first thing I did was sign a budget the other day, and it's a great budget. Important funding for education, for community colleges. We're now going to make community college free for everyone in Massachusetts. We are launching a program around literacy to make sure that our kids are learning to read early and in the way that they should. There's funding for childcare, historic funding for childcare. We're the only state in the country, the only state that's doing this. During COVID, there were a lot of federal funds to keep childcare centers open, pay providers, keep these centers open. When that federal funding stopped, we made a decision to continue it. And through this budget, that is now permanent. We will have those grants for our child care providers so that child care is available to more people. It's an important economic foundation for our state. Record funding for the T, which is important. We're continuing to make progress there. We created for the first time ever, this is something I proposed, a fund for disaster relief and resiliency. These storms, look at Vermont, right? That can happen here. So we decided that, and I'm grateful to the legislature for doing this, that we would create a fund that would support communities in responding to natural disasters, in building the kind of resilience and infrastructure that they need. So those are just some of the things in the budget that I'm really, really pleased about. The other thing that I signed was yesterday, actually, signed a gun bill that bans ghost guns, bans 3D printed guns, makes important reforms to our extreme risk protection orders so that more people are able to go to court and apply for an order that would keep guns out of the hands of someone who is a danger to themselves or to others. So really important bill that I was able to sign yesterday. When I return to the State House today, I'm going to sign a Wage Transparency Act. This is really important in further of wage equality, making sure that women get paid the same as men, the same job. That started back a few years ago with the Pay Equity Act, and it continues today with this Wage Transparency Act. And I want to give a shout out to former Lieutenant Governor Evelyn Murphy for her leadership over decades on this, and it's a privilege to be able to sign this important bill for women's equity.
Should we take a couple of calls before we talk about what they haven't done on Beacon Hill?
I was going to say there's a lot more to come. So.
There's a lot more to come.
Not much time, but
John
yes.
in Burlington, thank you for calling.
Hello, John. Welcome.
Yes, hi. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I have a question. With all the migrants that come over to Massachusetts, and I'm on the Section 8 waiting list, and so many other people are too. And when I signed up, they said it was going to be like 6 to 7 years. Wait, I'll be on my 7th year this February. So I mean, is that overflow of all these people? Is that going to be affected on us, the ones that are waiting for this opportunity?
Well, John, let me say this. Your question is exactly why I proposed the Affordable Homes Act earlier this year, and I'm hopeful that we're going to get that legislation done. This is a housing bond bill to create more housing around the state. Because, John, when I started as governor 18 months ago, it's estimated that we were short 200,000 housing units around the state. We're short 200,000 housing units. We need to build more housing. We need more housing for folks like John, who are receiving vouchers and assistance for low-income folks. We need more housing for workforce. We need more housing for our young people, some of whom are graduating. We had 500,000 graduate from Boston and Massachusetts schools. We want them staying here. We need more housing for our seniors. And so this is a big, bold housing bond bill that allows us to go out and work to build housing and work with communities. It's also why I've enforced the MBTA Communities Act, because we need more housing. It is a competitive disadvantage to our state right now, the high cost of housing. And so I'm, as governor, really focused on addressing that. In terms of the migrant issue, John, certainly that's added to the need, but I have to say, for the folks who have come in, we've housed them in shelter. We've gotten them work permits. They're actually, many of them are working right now in hospitals and in factories and hospitality and elsewhere, and they're getting exited from the system. But, it has put a strain on us, and it's why I've begged for Congress to act and do something on immigration reform. But at bottom, it really is, John, your situation is about the inadequacy and the lack of housing that has been the situation for years now in the state. Talk about Biden-Harris funding, John. We as I said, I applied for, we received over $7 billion in funding for infrastructure, transportation, climate-related projects. One of the things that we've received money from them on is to help build more public housing and decarbonize and repair existing public housing, because it turns out there's 40,000 units of public housing that are not habitable right now, haven't been for years, that need to be fixed. So John, as somebody who used to do fair housing cases, I really sympathize with the situation that you're in and know that I am committed to bringing online as quickly as I can, in partnership with communities around the state, more housing units.
Can we ask John to stay on hold, and could someone in your office talk to him about his Section 8 situation?
Yeah, sure.
To see if he's done everything he can.
That's a
John,
good
please
idea.
don't go away. One of our producers will get your contact info, and the governor's office will be in touch. Thank you much for your call, and good luck.
You know, John obviously underscores, as you just said, the crisis, Governor, with housing in Massachusetts, and we'll get back to the housing bill, which has not yet been finalized up there at the State House, even though they're running out of time. But the Globe did a pretty heart-wrenching story the other day talking about the migrant families that come here. They were at the MBTA station in Quincy on Friday, where 4 brothers, 5 to 14, slumped over benches asking their parents if they'd have to spend the night outside for the second time in 3 days. There was another outside Boston Medical Center, 1 o'clock in the morning, same night. A dozen people, including a 2-year-old, were milling about with their luggage after they were told they couldn't sleep in the hospital. You've had to change some of the regulations and shorten the stays of migrant families that come here. And a lot of the activists, obviously, were protesting over the State House, are very upset, think you should dip into the $8.2 billion rainy day fund, don't understand why our so-called right to shelter law is really not a right to shelter law anymore. So John is someone who lives here, but these are migrant families who've just come here. So what do you say?
Well, I mean, it's a really challenging situation. And I mean, it has been for the last couple of years. And the number of folks we've seen come over the border who have gone through incredible experiences. I mean, escaping gangs and violence and cartels and, you know, all sorts of geopolitical strife in their countries, and have made their way doing what I think anyone would do for their family, trying to get them and their kids to a better situation. I completely understand that. I also have worked really hard over the last 18 months to house as many as we could. And that's why we opened up shelter, we opened up spaces. I got the Biden administration to get on the ground here to process people for work permits. We've got community service providers stepping up, providing English classes, and these people are now being incorporated into and part of our workforce, right? But at the end of the day, I don't have control. The rainy day fund, that's not in my control, and that's there, but it's not a fund that you can just write a check from. And you know, the question really is, how much can we continue to afford? And you see the tab that we've been running up. And so that's what we're up against, because it's also the case that, you know, to John's point, right, we've got people here who have been here who also need housing, who have been looking for housing. We've got families that become newly evicted here in Massachusetts, or maybe there's a medical catastrophe in their family that ends up, you know, making them unable to work, and therefore in a housing insecure situation. We've got women and children fleeing domestic violence right here. And so I'm trying to find a way to manage things, which is why I imposed the 5-day limit for new people coming in, because I've been clear in broadcasting. We've been to the border. We've been to the border, and we've said, you know, Massachusetts, we are a kind and a generous people. We are also full here. And so, you know, as folks are assessing their options around the country, consider other places, because we are full here. And that continues to be my position. I also have to work to free up space in existing shelters for, as I mentioned, that high-risk category, you know, in population. So, you know, the 5 days is an opportunity for people who are new here to meet with a case manager. Perhaps they have a cousin or a family member living somewhere else in the United States. We'll help you get there. We'll help you get there. Or you may be able to find housing on your own through community or people you know here. And we'll provide you those services. But we can't continue to house people. The numbers go up and down. We did see a drop, but as people continue to come in, I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. And I have to be, I think honestly, Marjorie, it would be inhumane of me to sugarcoat what's going on or what people would be facing if they come to Massachusetts.
Some immigration advocates say it's inhumane to put limits on shelter for these people. They really have nowhere to go. What do you say to them?
I mean, if there's a funding source, right, it's funding, it's capacity, it's the actual space, it's the providers you have to pay to do this. So, I've said all along I'm open to ideas, but it is not unlimited in terms of capacity or funding, and that's a simple answer.
Let's take a call before we take a break. Julia in Brookline, you're on with the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Sure.
I'm calling from Brookline, and I'm also calling from the following place, which is being the expectant mother of a new child in the fall who will inherit all of the climate chaos that we're currently seeing over the course of her lifetime. And so my question is about the political will in Massachusetts to stop fossil fuels, given the fact that we still have new fossil fuel infrastructure projects going up in Massachusetts. And it doesn't seem from the current climate bill that is set to pass, if it does pass, that there would be anything to address these major new methane projects, such as the so-called Project Maple, or even the private jet airport expansions that are
Julia,
currently being
if I may,
considered.
because the lines are long, do you have a question for the governor?
Yeah, my question is, if the climate bill doesn't address the fact that we are still building new fossil fuel infrastructure, would Governor Healey still sign it, or what would she do in order to get Massachusetts off fossil fuels?
Julia, we appreciate your question.
And
Thank you.
congratulations on the new baby.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, congratulations and best wishes there, Julia. Look, we've leaned hard into all things renewables. This administration appointing the country's first ever climate chief. We've gone out with the biggest procurement on offshore wind in the country, and we are competing every day to make Massachusetts the hub of climate technology. In terms of legislation, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes to my desk. I think there are some really important things. I know I, in particular, am focused on permitting and siting, because we've got to find easier, more expeditious ways to get our projects that are related to renewables. You have the wind, you build the turbines out there, but that wind, that energy's got to come on shore. And you need substations, and you need hookups, and you need, the grid infrastructure. In order to do something like that, you need to make sure that you are permitting and siting these things in the quickest, most effective way possible. And so that's an important piece of the legislation that's been proposed. So I continue to be grateful to my team. We've done things that haven't been done before. We appointed somebody who's leading an office of energy transformation, who's working directly with utility companies and customers to bring energy online, to bring renewable energy online, so that we're, decarbonizing, whether it's housing, manufacturing, or transportation. And that's the kind of work we need to do.
We got to take a break.
We are talking with the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. She's going to be with us to the top of the hour, taking our questions and yours, 877-308-970. We are broadcasting from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In 1974, about 7% of Boston public school teachers were black. As part of the desegregation mandate, the court ordered that number to be no less than 20%. 50 years later,
it's incredibly frustrating that we are still having these conversations.
Critics say the district is still struggling with hiring and retaining black teachers.
The progress that we were promised and have been fighting for has not been realized.
I'm Esteban Bustillos, Boston Busing at 50, today on GBH's All Things Considered.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Andrew Lloyd Webber, Liz Cheney, historian Annette Gordon-Reed, and news anchor Chris Wallace. bostonspeakers.org. And Commonwealth Shakespeare Company, presenting The Winter's Tale, Shakespeare's captivating parable of betrayals and renewed hope, is this summer's free Shakespeare on the Boston Common, July 16th through August 4th. comshakes.org. And Gentle Giant Moving and Storage Company, employing athletes since 1980 and currently hiring to join their team. Gentle Giant is an equal opportunity employer. More at gentlegiant.com/careers. And Hebrew Senior Life, a Harvard Medical School affiliate, empowering seniors to reach their full potential with a wide range of services. You can discover senior living, healthcare, aging research, and more at allweareforyou.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. If you've been listening, you know that the governor, and by the way, Michelle Wu will be joining us for Ask the Mayor on Tuesday at the library. We're joined by the governor, Maura Healey, who's kind enough to give us an hour a month here to answer our questions and yours. And you can talk to her. Lines are full. Or you can text her at 877-301-8970.
So, Governor Healey, you just mentioned the bills you have signed. Congratulations, involving guns and child care and wage equity and things like that. The budget, that's a big deal. But I spent a lot of time getting enraged over the legislature. I've been getting enraged over the legislature for a long time now. But as we said before, housing is the biggest crisis in the country. The housing bill, we don't really know. They're running out of time here. What's going to happen? Jim obsesses over the legislature's 5 weeks of vacation.
5 months.
5 months, excuse me,
Thank
of
you.
vacation. And the economic development bill is also pending. Hospital oversight is pending. All these things are pending. If they can't do this in the next few hours, should they not extend the time to get this done and perhaps give other legislators a chance to read what's in these bills if they decide to ram them through? This is not a very good look, I don't think, for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Well, it's going to be a really busy 24 hours. And there's a lot in conference committee. But the fact of the matter is, all these pieces of legislation, and really important ones, I'm really focused on housing and economic development in particular, but there's a lot of important pieces of legislation that are there. They're in now what's called conference committee. Some of them have come out of conference committee, but they're the product of a lot of work over the course of a year, a lot of hearings, a lot of stakeholder.
Oh, there you
Sorry,
go.
guys.
There you go.
Did you?
That's fine. We heard that.
You guys
They
heard
heard it,
enough.
yeah.
Okay, but they're just a product of a lot of work over the course of the last year. So I don't think things are getting rammed through because they've actually been considered, debated, discussed. But there's a lot to decide and for them to work through in the next 24 hours. And I'm hopeful and optimistic that we'll get there.
Can we ask you about a couple? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
I was just
Marjorie.
going to say, I know you have to work with these people, so you probably have to be nice to them. But just from a citizen's perspective,
Sort of like you and me, Marjorie.
Yeah,
Same
that's right.
sort of deal,
You
right?
talked
yeah.
a lot about transparency when you ran for office. I have gone insane reading these stories in the Globe about campaign funds being spent. And we don't know who these people are meeting with. They could be meeting with developers, influential people, at these dark cigar bars down the long stairs in the leather furniture, spending astronomical amounts of money, enraged by the fact that Karen Spilka, and by the way, congratulations, you come and answer questions from the press. I cannot say that that's true a lot of our legislators. Karen Spilka's earmarks got doubled into secret session. We don't know who voted for what, whether they are worthwhile earmarks. What about a little transparency coming from up in Beacon Hill? I mean, citizens don't know what's going on. Maybe we should be more upset about it, but we don't know what's going on up there.
Well, look, I encourage people to visit the State House, get to know your rep, get to know your senator, get to know your legislator, get to know your governor, right? We're all here in a representative capacity, and I think there are opportunities to do that, honestly, for people to make their voices heard. I mean, with respect to funding, I'm the one who signed that budget the other day, so I'm very comfortable with the earmarks made because they're important investments, in local economic development projects and infrastructure and housing and programs on a lot of fronts. So, having looked at all of that, I'm personally very comfortable with all of that.
But shouldn't they be done in the light of day? I think that's the point. The issue is not the substance. If you think it's good, legislate, that's the law. But shouldn't it be done in the
this
light
wedding
of day?
venue in Ashland. I've never been to the wedding venue in Ashland.
I've actually been there.
And maybe
for
it's
meetings.
lovely. And maybe it deserves. What's it getting?
Well, whatever.
300 grand.
Shouldn't it be
whatever
done
it's
in the
getting?
light of day? Wouldn't you be more comfortable with that?
I think it is done in the light of day. I don't know, what. There's hearings. There's, of course, they've got to go take everything back. But look, I just encourage people to having been in the State House the last several days, there's a lot of people there, there's a lot of activity, and people have a means to make their voices heard on things.
Let's hear it from Amy in Medford. She's on with the governor of the Commonwealth. Hi, Amy. Amy.
Hi. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, okay. I say it's a privilege and a pleasure to be on. This is a little nerve-wracking for me, so thank you for having me. My question is twofold. I do want to state that I have strong hope right now that this is not where we're going to end up, but I still feel that the stakes are so high that I need to ask this. If the Republicans are successful in a nationwide abortion ban, I'm curious how this will affect Massachusetts, given that it's codified into law here, but also because I've considered that, for example, marijuana is still federally illegal, yet the states seem to have an ability to override that. But two, and maybe more importantly, how would you as the governor protect us, the women in danger, both in Massachusetts and maybe the women coming into Massachusetts for help?
Yeah. Well, Amy, let me say this. We were just talking about the legislature. I want to give credit to the legislature. The Massachusetts legislature has been in a position of leadership now for years in protecting women's access to abortion and reproductive health care. So you are right, Amy, that we have great laws on the books here that protect access, protect abortion, protect providers. There are providers here who are doing telehealth and providing abortion medication to folks around the country. But the question you ask, Amy, is a good one. And I can tell you, as a former attorney general, having sued Donald Trump over 100 times, it's a different scenario right now because the courts have changed. And we have a Supreme Court that's basically given immunity to whatever a president wants to do. So the stakes are very high because, it's one thing for me to enforce laws to protect people here. It's another thing for me to not have an ability to keep a U.S. Attorney's Office or a Department of Justice from investigating patients, providers, a U.S. Department of Public Health finding ways to track menstrual cycles, to do all sorts of things. So you were rightly pointing up the reality of this election. And, we were talking about J.D. Vance and misogyny and comments that I think most women, when you hear stuff like that, you know exactly who these guys are and exactly what they're about and what they're saying. People really need to, men and women need to understand that, the kinds of things that Amy's speaking of are at risk. They're at risk here, and they're at risk, around the country. And I say that as somebody who has been staunchly protective of reproductive freedom in a state where we defend women's access to abortion and needed care. Even with that in place, we are not safe or immune from what might happen. So look at Project 2025 and tell everybody to get out and vote. Get registered and get out and vote, because the other thing is, if they come for one freedom, and I'm so glad that Kamala Harris is focused on freedom, because that's what this is about, the freedom to access health care, the freedom to drink clean water and breathe clean air, the freedom to be free from fossil fuels, and have independence, the freedom to love who you love and be who you are. It's just so important that, when people think you're coming after one freedom, everybody's subject, right? And whenever somebody's coming after someone's right, know that the rights of others are always subject to attack, and that's just not who we are as Americans.
Amy, thank you much for your call. Two smaller questions about things still pending on Beacon Hill. If part of this, I think it's in the Economic Development Bill, if this happy hour reinstitution, is that a proper word? I think it is. The reinstatement of happy hour were to make it to your desk, you'd sign that?
I'd have to take a look at it.
Well, I mean, the concept I'm talking about. Do you support the concept of having happy hour again in the Commonwealth?
I think there are problems with it, to be honest. But again, I'm going to look at, problems for restaurants and our hospitality industry, to be honest. So, look, in the scheme of things, what I'm really focused on is not happy hour. It's housing, economic development, and the kinds of infrastructure investments that we need to make.
How about Mayor Wu's proposal that apparently is now made it through the House and not yet in the Senate that would allow her to rejigger the property tax? Would you support that if it got to your desk?
I haven't looked at it. I have to see what it says.
Okay.
I have one quick question. Jim, as you may have known, got the award from the Massachusetts Teachers Association, President's Award.
That was 1990,
so he
Marjorie.
has been
Thank
carrying
you.
their water ever since. But I haven't.
By the way, there's somebody standing here who's endorsed by that same organization. Are you aware of that?
I hope that continues, because I know that you are against.
No, and my stepdad was president of his NEA Teachers Union, and both of my parents are NEA members.
Okay, well then you have
take that, Marjorie.
You've got a wonderful background there to explain why you think it's a bad idea to get rid of the MCAS graduation requirement, which kids take in their 10th year, and then have 2 more years to pass the test so that they can graduate with some basic skills. The Massachusetts Teachers Association wants to take that graduation requirement away. You don't. Why not?
Because I think it's a disservice to kids, particularly kids of color and low-income kids. It is important to have standards in place and assessment tools in place so that we can make sure that we are doing all we can to get kids educated in the way they need to be educated for this world we're in today. And look, Massachusetts, we're in the Boston Public Library. First library in the country, Massachusetts, right? Home to the first library, home to the first school. We have education enshrined in our Constitution. We are #1 in education, just voted #1 in education, #1 in innovation. We've got so much going for us. So our schools and the way we educate kids is really important to us. It's our calling card, too, as a state. And I am going to protect that. I want every young person to have the same educational opportunity, right? No matter your zip code, no matter your race, no matter your income level. And, Secretary Pat Tutwiler is our Secretary of Education. Have you had Pat on yet?
No, I don't know why. As soon as you said, I don't know why.
You got to have Pat on.
Because he disagrees with Jim on the MCAS.
No, that's...
No, Pat's great.
You
And
are
Pat was a teacher,
sad
principal, superintendent, most recently in Lynn, and then I picked him to come over. And he and I really agree with this. And I think, Adrian Walker wrote a column today that laid it out to support the position that we're taking. Now, there's a different question about what you do to serve kids who aren't passing MCAS, because you have to find ways to get them where they need to be so that they are able to receive a diploma. And there are about 700 kids in the state right now who are not able to pass MCAS and are not able to receive a diploma. I want to fix that, okay? But I don't want to throw out all of MCAS because there's this discrete issue that we're trying to address.
By the way, in fairness, they're not throwing out MCAS. They're throwing it out.
As
they
a
want to throw it as a
graduation
graduation requirement. Are you going to campaign for the no side?
I've already been clear about my position.
But in addition to saying you're no, are you going to actively campaign for a no vote?
I'll make my position clear. Absolutely. I mean, it's important, it's important. And, I actually have a lot of good conversations with the teachers union about this, because I don't think their issue is with using an assessment tool. But you've got to have that tool in place, and it shouldn't be left to a situation. If that ballot initiative goes through, you're going to be left with a situation where every town
has their own deal.
Yes, their own way of doing it, and I just think that ultimately that does a disservice to our kids. Again, we're a state #1 in education. I want us to stay #1 in education.
Joey and Russell. Russell, whatever. Hello, Joey and Russell. You're on with the governor. Hi there, Joey. Welcome.
It's a super small town, so no worries, Jim.
Thank you. You're a consul. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, hi, Governor Healey. I want to begin by thanking you for your complete support for Kamala Harris for president. That's super important to me as a young person. The reason I'm calling, though, is that last night I was on my phone, because why would I go outside as a member of Gen Z? And I saw a elected official in North Carolina, I believe it was. She did a rural listening tour where she went to the rural communities, met people where they're at in these small towns. I live in a rural community. I just graduated from a rural school, and I'm so proud of it. And so I was wondering, especially with the legislative session winding down, if you would maybe consider you or your team going around the state and coming to some of these rural communities to do a listening tour, meet people where they're at, so that we can all work together to make a better Massachusetts and uplift our rural communities that have historically been forgotten.
That was a beautiful call,
Yeah, thank
Joey.
you for that, Joey. Thanks for calling in. And make sure you talk to your friends and make sure they're registered and are out voting. There's opportunities, Joey. We're not that far from the New Hampshire border. 4 electoral college votes. You can get up there and help get up the vote. Or, if you have the capacity, you can get down to places like North Carolina, where not only Kamala Harris is on the ballot, but we need to elect a Democratic governor in North Carolina. Joey, you're absolutely right, and I really lean into this. I grew up in New Hampshire. I grew up on a 40-acre farm surrounded by farms, and rural communities is something that means a lot to me. It's why when I started, I appointed the state's first ever rural director. So we have a director of rural affairs. We've done in our economic development bill a whole section that's devoted to rural economies and how we support farms and rural economies. And that's really, really important to me, Joey. So, I don't know if the team's been to Russell yet or not, but I'll make sure that I take that back and love to get you involved because I also have a youth council. And if you stay on the line, let us get your contacts and we can get you plugged in with some of the work that we're doing and that you can be a part of and help drive.
Stay on hold, Joey, and thanks so.
Population 1,643.
Tell the truth. You ever heard of Russell before Joey called?
That's about the. I grew up in a little town called Hampton Falls, and about the time it was about 1,700 people. So
there you go.
I appreciate.
Had you heard of Russell?
Of course, I heard of Russell.
Okay.
I'm the governor. Jesus, I wouldn't be doing my job.
351 cities and towns.
Yeah.
That's right.
Do you have a quick question, Margaret? Because we only have a minute here.
No, I think we're out of time here.
We didn't talk about the Olympics.
Let's talk about the Olympics.
Awesome! And that
Simone
gymnast from
Biles?
Stoughton. We've got Massachusetts
God. He's going to be up
And
tonight.
Worcester.
I know. It's great. It's great.
The kid with the glasses from Worcester. They're both in the men's gymnastics team and the Americans.
What do you think about Jason Tatum not playing in the first game for the
Terrible.
men's basketball team? Maura Healey, basketball star.
I love Steve Kerr. He knows what he's doing. Jason Tatum's a pro. We're good. It's about the gold.
Okay.
About the gold.
Governor Healey, thank you very much for coming
Good
in.
to
We
see
very
you,
much
Maura
appreciate
Healey.
it.
Thank you so much.
Hope you have a lovely August. We've been speaking with Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, who's kind enough to visit us on a monthly basis.
More serious disease, it is most commonly spread to people through the bite of an infected mosquito. Red Sox Mariners wrap up their series at Fenway this afternoon. 4:10 start. Showers and thunderstorms this afternoon. We are seeing some drizzle right now. High, low 80s. 82 right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
He is Jim Browning. I am Marjorie Eake, and welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. On Friday, we're going to be joined here at the library with live music from the Silk Road Ensemble. Jim, that's going to be great. Next Tuesday, we'll be back here at the library with another edition of Ask the Mayor with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. She'll take our questions and yours. Hello again, Jim. What's happening?
Well, this is interesting because it's underway, and I think that rather than everyone think this is alarming, this is a problem, we need to stop it, everybody is realizing it's here to stay and it's here to grow. It's basically progress. And so people in the industry are now figuring out the ways in which they have to work with it. And so we're seeing that happen right now with the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. It's a big union where you find editors and people who are working behind the scenes on films because they just recently approved a contract with 85% of their union membership approving this contract, which does allow for AI provisions. So what the contract doesn't allow for is a studio to hire AI or hire to use the software to create editing or to create sound or lighting. However, they can order their employees to use the AI software, which means maybe instead of 9 employees working on a project, you only have 3. Instead of 14 hours spent on an individual episode, maybe you're only spending 2. So it is starting to have its effects. And that's to say nothing of people like Tyler Perry now stepping forward. Remember, he was the one who created that $800 million studio. It was supposed to be an $800 million studio that he shut down because he realized he was going to be building buildings that no longer served a purpose because things like lighting, makeup, costume design, a lot of that can be rendered through AI. He stepped forward and saying he hasn't necessarily used makeup artists on some of his last projects because that can be done with AI. So we're seeing this pivot and how Hollywood is beginning to work with it, but the way it's going to still reduce jobs in the end.
Yeah, but it's an interesting point in the New York Times article I think you were citing, saying IATSE, which represents editors, etc., was far more willing to accept that AI is a significant part of the future despite the obvious job loss as compared to the writers when their contract not so long ago, we remember that strike, where they were tougher, not an absolute no, but a far narrower window on the AI front. So there is a division in terms of how hard to fight back in the industry, yes?
Yeah, but even for whatever reason, the union president endorsed this contract too. And maybe they saw that they didn't have leverage. Maybe they recognized that the writers and or actors have more presence, because you really can't create a film completely reliant on AI at this point, or a television show, whereas that is changing. I was reading this New York Times piece, and so we talked about this. I just interviewed Kristen Chenoweth, who's here for Queen of Versailles.
Great.
She was telling me, as we were just setting up for our interview, that she recently did a picture where she thought the lighting was horrible, and they explained to her, don't worry, we're going to be able to fix it in post. And so already just the way films are being done is shifting. I think it was also top of mind because I've been listening to this Barbra Streisand biography, which I'll be talking about for the next 4 years because it's 48 hours long, so it'll take me forever.
Does she narrate the...
She does.
I didn't know that.
But I've heard it's great, though.
It is. It's really fascinating. Not a modest bone in her body, but that's great. It's still fun. But she takes you through how to create movies, because she was a director, of course, and still is a director for so long, and she goes in depth about just the lighting process, because she worked with so many people in the golden age of movies and musicals. So coming into this conversation with Kristen Chenoweth, I realized I had a greater understanding, and then all of a sudden, all of this expertise seems to be evaporating because there's no need for it.
Yeah, but you seem to be more accepting than I would think you'd be. Maybe I'm mischaracterizing it, but I have to say, I don't know if this is true. I think it's true. It's how I feel at the moment. I'm much less interested in seeing something that's beautiful and well put together if a computer put it together as opposed to you or a real live editor who's been doing it for 20 years. I mean, it's sort of the discussion we first had a couple of years ago when that AI created painting won that painting contest in some place, Wyoming,
in Colorado,
wherever the hell it was. I mean, isn't there a piece of that? You want to know that there is a creative body and mind behind the thing that you're admiring, no?
Well, I realize that I now have two tracks, two realities to this. Yes, I always want to see the hand in the work. Do I want to look at a picture with Kristen Chenoweth in a movie or television show and know that there was a whole team on set creating this? Absolutely. And I think you'll be able to tell, although listening to the AI Al Michaels, you can't necessarily tell the difference on the Olympics. So I want to always see that. I want that to be the case, but I also realize the reality is this ship has left and there's no turning it back now, and so we now not have to focus on how we're going to stop it, but how we're going to work with it. It's just a reality. It's not one I love.
You know, one last thing about this. You mentioned how Kristen Chenoweth said they were going to fix the bad lighting, and lighting makes a difference in how you look. If you have bad lighting, you look terrible. Great lighting, you look great. And there's a lot of soft lighting for actors and actresses as they get older and stuff like that. So I'm wondering, will, down the road, any Jane and Joe, who actually is a really talented actor but may not be the best looking thing in the world, gets turned into something different on the screen?
Well, it already happens. Look at what we see some of our friends maybe doing on Instagram and TikTok. And you can apply all manner of filter with just a couple swipes. Or
it happens in major films. They de-age people like Robert De Niro, right? In films in the last couple of years.
Tom Hanks is doing it for his next one.
But I'm talking about a really kind of a dramatic sort of thing where you can take away 50 pounds or take away...
You can do it now.
You can.
Yeah. I mean, all I have to do is basically run it through the software, press a couple clicks. And
don't like it.
Again, I don't love it either, but I now realize we're in this situation, especially where there are no international guardrails around this, that what could happen in one area of the world isn't necessarily going to be policed in another, so there is no way to contain it.
You know, by the way, next week, we were going to announce this on Friday, the lead producer for our show is Jamie Bot. And we're going to see if that show is inferior or superior to whatever it is that Jamie allegedly does.
Don't laugh, Jim. It could be Jim and Marjorie Bot pretty soon.
Have you listened to the Al Michaels AI?
I've read about it. I haven't listened.
No.
So I listened this morning.
You can't tell.
It's really hard to tell. I mean,
is that not upsetting?
It's very upsetting.
Okay, fine.
The only thing that makes it not upsetting, again, two realities, is that it's not like they stole his voice. NBC has a contract with him to use his likeness, and they've created this, and he gets to collect a check and be at home. I mean, he's 80. He's almost 80. He's well retired. But it's really hard to tell you're not listening to Al Michaels in the present day.
Okay, that was Simone Biles, so the actual Simone Biles, I think I saw
hope
that.
So.
Jamie just wrote me a note saying, can Jamie Bot get you a bag of nuts from the Newsfeed Cafe?
No, Jamie Bot
That's
cannot.
a very fine point.
That's an excellent point.
You know, can we play, for Marjorie left listeners with the impression right before you came on that Salvador Dali was going to be at the MFA any day now. He's dead.
I said not the Salvador Dali. He's no longer with us.
Okay, so here he is. If you want to hear his voice, here he was on one of the great talk shows ever, Dick Cavett, talking about his mustache way back in 1971.
Le moustache is the constant, tragical event in the human face. Remember,
the constant tragic element?
Tragical element in the human face.
Has anyone ever been injured by your mustache?
Almost everybody in modern time.
He was a hell of a self-promoter. I am a big fan. I know much less about art than the two of you do. When I read in this review, was it Mary White who wrote the review? Two things were incredible. I think it was Mary White. I'll check in a second in the Globe. One, that it's the first Dolly exhibit at the MFA.
Yep.
Please explain that. Number two, in the lead paragraph, whoever wrote it, and I think it is Mary White, I'll check in a second, he refers to Dolly as a gifted lightweight? Really? A gift? I'll read that. You're looking... Okay, tell me why he hasn't been at the MFA before.
Well, if people think that, I think you'll be completely turned around after you see this work. So the MFA fully acknowledges that it never really stepped into Dali territory and it didn't collect...
Excuse me, I'm not alone in presupposing Salvador Dali is to be a gifted lightweight. Go ahead.
Well, I think that's because he's somebody who was in a lot of college dorms, including mine, I realized when I saw one of the paintings. I thought,
that was huge.
This is why this is so familiar, because it was in my dorm for 2 years. But what we find here at the MFA is correcting course and working with the Salvador Dali Museum in St. Petersburg, Florida, which if you haven't been, I have been. They have this extraordinary collection of Dali works there in St. Petersburg. And what they have done is rooted Salvador Dali and all of the people who influenced him. We're talking about Vermeer and Goya and Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. He is somebody who came from this great tradition and interest in painting, but then of course made it his own. And he was growing up and he was always a self-promoter because it was just about performance art as much as anything for him, with the mustache and having a pet anteater. And even when he was young, he had to take his exams in art school. He refused to take the exams because he didn't think the teachers were as good as he was. And he kind of proved them correct because we're seeing this exhibition. Then he goes off to Paris, he meets Miro and Picasso and gets swept into the art circle, but always carrying forward this great artistic tradition. So what we find at the MFA is his work in contrast or alongside, not even necessarily in contrast, to some of these great Dutch masters, Dutch painting still lifes, to the Goya prints. And we see how he's carrying that forward, but of course he was a surrealist, so he was doing something altogether different. What's also interesting is they point out that he's coming really of age in the atomic age. So we see the melting clocks and forms just melting away. That's very nuclear. That's a very nuclear concept in terms of fallout. This is also the time of Freud, who's going into our minds and making us think differently about our existence and what informs us. He's carrying that through to his paintings. The reason I kind of frowned when he was described as maybe a lightweight is because all of that aside, when you see his paintings up close and not just the poster, you see how the technical mastery that this man had. You might not like the subject matter, even though it's pretty cool when you see the dual figures and it's like decoding a puzzle. But when you get up close to these paintings, they are phenomenal. The last one I'll just leave you with is one I keep thinking about. It's called Christ in Perspective. It's a red chalk drawing, and it's Christ on the cross, but from the view of God. So we're looking down at the top of Christ's head. So not at all anything you would ever associate. There's nothing really surrealistic about it necessarily. But again, this is him working his way out as an artist and working from the people who always influenced him. And I can't think of another time that I've seen this perspective of Christ.
Yeah, but it's there through December 1st. You know, we should do the play next because I'm worried that we'll run out of time.
Which play?
Hoops, because it closes on
at the Strand
August
in
10th.
Dorchester.
Yeah. Tell us about it.
Yes, so Hoops, this is, as you mentioned, the Strand Theatre in Dorchester. This is presented by Company One Theatre. It's free with pay-what-you-can tickets. By the way, it's an experience. You arrive a little bit early, and you'll find a DJ playing on stage. You'll find vendors in the Strand lobby. But this sprang out of the Hoops Project, which is a project by which people were being photographed all around the country in their hoop earrings and getting their stories about what the hoop earrings represent. So the playwright for this piece, Ilania Ileana Pipes, took a lot of these stories together and created this show called Hoops, and it's an amalgamation of monologues and song and sketch comedy, the DJ, but it is looking at the hoop earring in popular culture and cultures going back to pre-Columbian times, pre-modern civilizations, all the way up to Donna Summer, Angela Davis, and people today. But what does it represent? And so we find women telling their stories about going off to college and carrying their family with them in their ears, but also being subjected to bias in the workplace, until there's one great story of a woman whose boss pulls her aside and said, "Don't you diminish the size of your hoop earrings," because she's making them smaller and smaller and smaller because she thinks she knows she's being treated differently for what she's wearing. So it's a very introspective look at, I think, society and individuals, but through this one seemingly simple piece of jewelry.
What a clever idea.
Indeed,
because I do remember that when I was younger, the hoop girls versus the non-hoop girls, and then the hoop boys, and the judgments that were made. No, I had trouble with earrings in my ears. I had to wear gold. It's a long story.
Well, you can have a gold hoop, you know.
Yeah, but the very expensive gold. Some people are allergic to non-expensive gold.
Well, that's
in their ears.
sad.
It was a tragedy for me.
That actually came up in the play. Yeah.
Yeah, I've overcome it, Jim.
I'm really
Wasn't
sorry.
easy,
I'm
but
really
I did.
sorry.
Well, how about let's go back to Dee Dee, because it was described as this genuinely great film about the internet. It's going to be at the Coolidge Corner in the Kendall Square Theater. What's so great about it?
We have some sound, too.
We do.
Should we do that?
Want to play the sound first?
Sure,
Get us
why
in the
not?
mood? Okay, here is a little bit of sound from the movie Dee Dee.
What was your name again?
Chris. All my friends just call me Wang Wang.
And what should I call you? You're never gonna survive high school.
That's a pretty good line.
What's so great about this movie?
This is a really, really fantastic movie.
It
so
is?
it came out in Sundance and was a huge hit. It's written and directed by Sean Wang, and this is his major feature debut. But it's looking at this boy, Didi, who that's Mandarin for little brother. It's a term of affection. But he's 13 years old. The year is 2008, and he's coming of age. And I realized as I was watching this what a horrible little boy I was, because all of the horrible stuff I see this kid do in this movie, I thought, I did all of those things. I told those lies. I treated my sister like that. I fought with my mother like that. It is so real and so... I don't want to say earnest, because this comedy is extremely irreverent, extremely inappropriate at times, but so explosively funny. I choose that adverb with intent because we see the havoc that he and his friends are wreaking in the first 90 seconds of the film, including blowing up the neighbor's mailbox. I just think this is such a genuine, real story. Add to that Sean Wang is really telling his story as a Taiwanese American boy growing up in California, and so add that to it too, to be somewhat of an outsider, trying to also come of age, trying to figure out what your relationship with girls is supposed to be and how you have your first kiss, but also try to hang out with the cool kids and stay away from the not cool kids.
Oh, this sounds great.
It is fantastic.
You know, The Guardian said it was one of the few great films about the internet. And you know what movie about the internet they did not mention that we talk about all the time? Joaquin Phoenix's relationship with an operating
the computer.
system.
Yeah.
No, it's not called The Computer. You remember what it's called?
She.
She, exactly. No, her.
Her. Whoops.
Close enough. No, a lot of people call it she, but the people in the movie call it her. Are you in that camp that it's one of the few great movies about the internet, or you don't give a damn?
It's been a long time. So I would love to go actually back and watch it and see what came true. But you're right, because this movie is also about the internet, and because if you think about 2008, it's really the time when you're moving off of MySpace, you're figuring out what Facebook is, and figuring out that you can actually have relationships and somewhat be a secret figure online, that you can live your life partly through your bedroom and not having to go out into the outside world.
Is this a limited run deal, or is this not a limited run?
Well, it's just about to open. Hopefully it'll be really successful. And by the way, Sean Wang is going to be at the Coolidge Corner Theater, I think, tomorrow night doing a Q&A and talking about this film.
Do we have time to talk about Kneecap?
Well, it's your choice. Do you want to squeeze it in quickly here, or you want to hold it next week?
We can talk about it here, or
Okay.
we can hold it next week.
We got time.
Well, those are the two options. Which do you want to do?
Start talking. We've got time.
This is what it's like to go out to dinner with me. Well, I'll have this, but maybe I'll have that. So Kneecap is actually kind of almost, in a way, a companion film, I think, to Dee Dee, in that it's a coming-of-age film, but vastly different. So here we're talking about also extremely irreverent and extremely inappropriate. A couple of boys growing up in Northern Ireland.
Weren't they on your show?
They were on our show because Kneecap is a Northern Ireland hip-hop group who raps in Irish. And so there's a whole political backdrop to
Look
who
at
they
Marjorie,
are. And
she's
they,
so
they
excited.
have been targeted for wanting to bring back their indigenous language, to bring back Irish. So they got swept up into this
Wait a
huge
minute,
campaign
Irish?
to do that.
Or Gaelic? Is it Gaelic?
Sort of, it's described as
Combo?
Gaelic, but they call it Irish.
Wow.
And so this is a story, basically origin story of this hip hop group where they're pretty heavy into the drugs. They kind of literally fall into their laps. One of their fathers, played by Michael Fassbender, so they got an A-list actor, is kind of in hiding because he needs to be for having participated in the Troubles in bombing. They co-opt. Well, their music teacher kind of finds their artistic talent, starts to add music with them. They get him to do drugs. I mean, it's just this wild story. But the visual language of this is incredible with the pacing, the animation that they add at times, the language, the lighting, the editing. I also loved this a lot. 2 great movies opening on Friday.
Do you want to hear part of your brilliant interview with these people?
I'd love to hear part of my
It was in Jared's interview with the Belfast-based Kneecap. They're talking about why their Irish rapping is construed as a political act. Here it is.
I think it's just seen as some sort of overall a means of resistance towards the state in the north, because they've been so bitter towards the language since the establishment of the northern state in 1921. So I think we were just kind of put in this corner of being massive political activists. Of course, the language is very important for us, and it's an integral part of of the Kneecap project. Overall, we just wanted to have music in the language that resonated with young people.
Pretty good little
And they owned it and they ran with it, and they didn't care. They were so irreverent. They're hilarious.
You know, before we go, you raised a sore point yesterday in passing, and you had a smile on your face like it was a light topic. Marjorie's going to see the Versailles thing tonight.
Yes.
You and I are both going tomorrow night. Last time we went to a play at the same time, your seats were 3 rows better than mine, which bothered me through the whole play. Do you have any idea what the arrangement is tomorrow?
I'm hoping to move up in the world, so I'm hoping for 4 rows ahead of you.
By the way,
That's
it really
right.
was troubling. Wouldn't you have been upset about it?
All the big wigs were up with Jared. You're in the back.
I was with the small
Joyce
wigs,
Glenn with
actually,
you
I
with the
was.
small wigs. There were no wigs in your row. The wigs were with you.
I have already, because you texted me earlier, you asked me to bring Twizzlers. I will throw them back to you.
Thank you very much.
I'm happy to do that.
What are you doing on that show of yours today, there, Jared Bowen?
Today we're going to be talking to Rachel Bertone. If we're missing Paris after seeing the Olympics, you can go to the Regal Music Theater and see An American in Paris. Their great musical that's on right now. We'll talk to Lindsay Deutsch, who grew up going to conservatory schools playing the violin, but now she does mashups of Justin Bieber and Lady Gaga. She's going to be appearing in Worcester. And then, I know he's your friend too, Jeff Edgers has just done this amazing piece about the Police on the 40th anniversary of the release of their album Synchronicity. Biggest hit of their career. And yet their career the band came apart after that. So he did this oral history about why.
Jeff used to be at the Globe. He's now at the Washington Post. He did a film where he's trying to unite, what's the band? The Byrds, was it? The Brothers? Whatever it was.
Kinks?
No, Kinks. I'm sorry, the Kinks. And in the middle of a damn film, a reporter for the Globe is playing guitar in a hotel room with Sting. I mean, the guy is amazing. And the piece he wrote
really great.
about Sinead O'Connor and his relationship with her, and he wrote it right after she died. It was such a beautiful he's fabulous. I can't wait to hear that.
He just had a 3-hour interview with Sting to get Sting to open up about the dissolution of the band.
Wow, that
God,
is huge.
good for him.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will probably see you tomorrow night, assuming I can see that far in the distance at the play. Thank you very much. 2 o'clock, The Culture Show with Jared Bowen. Thank you.
I'll wave to you.
Thank you,
I'm
Jared.
sure you will. It's really accurate. It's grating.
We have been speaking with
Grating.
Jared Bowen, who gets much better seats than Jim Browdy at
He
the
does,
theater and drives
actually.
Jim crazy.
Does.
He's GBH Executive Arts Editor and host of The Culture Show, which airs daily at 89.7 at 2 o'clock, and on Fridays it's right here, broadcasting from the Boston Public Library if you want to come in and see everybody in person. Up next, Harvard national security expert Juliette Kayyem is here to talk about her Olympic experience. She was over there in Paris. We are very jealous. Plus, the nuances in border politics in the South and the killing of the Hamas big leader in Iran. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
Throughout Kamala Harris's long career, she's left an impact on many people, like her mentee from her days as San Francisco DA.
Being a reformer, an activist, an organizer, a young black woman, a teenage mom, all those things, I would have never thought that I would have worked for a district attorney.
I'm Elsa Chang. All week long, we're hearing from those who knew Vice President Harris before she got to D.C. on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and the University of Massachusetts Amherst Mount Ida campus in Newton, connecting students and employers in Greater Boston and offering on-campus graduate and pre-college programs. Learn more at umass.edu/Mount Ida campus. And Hebrew Senior Life, a Harvard Medical School affiliate empowering seniors to reach their full potential through senior living, healthcare, aging research, and more. You can consider Hebrew Senior Life at allweareforyou.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Tuesday, the mayor joins us. Mayor Wu will be here from 11 to 12 at the library. We're joined now by national security expert Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, contributing writer for The Atlantic, and allegedly back from a grueling workload at the Olympics in her Paris 2024 t-shirt. Welcome home, Juliette Kayyem.
Thank
it's
you.
nice to see you.
I should have stayed longer. That was my only regret.
Well,
oh wow, you guys full house. Hello.
Yeah, we did
delayed
know about
reaction.
The rail sabotage situation at the Olympics. That was a few days ago, but now we've had this wonderful opening ceremony where people criticized. I thought it was pretty good. The opening ceremony, we had this wonderful performances last night by the U.S. gymnastics team and Celine Dion. So give us the overview. What were you doing over there, and what was your...
Oh, so I was there for work, and then, if anything happened, CNN grabbed me because something happened. So that was, and the something was a sabotage on the train stations outside of Paris. I think all the focus was on Paris, all the security. It's really hard. Where they sabotaged was essentially arson. They have some left-wing activists under arrest now. We'll just see if that holds. It disrupted a couple 100,000 people on travel. And it just was, it was intended to make the point to disrupt and make uncomfortable a lot of people, but it was clearly not intended to kill anyone. It was in the middle of the night, and what they did is, train lines in Europe are much more extensive than here. Is they just simply got to a weak link in the train lines. They didn't get to the stations. They didn't get to the generators or anything like that. That kind of sabotage, unfortunately, is relatively easy. And it was a bit of a damper, especially because you didn't know what it was originally. But then, by evening, the big damper, though it really wasn't, was the rain.
The rain, yeah,
I know, but it was
tough.
like, there was something about being in the opening ceremony with the rain, which was, it was a wacky opening ceremony, and therefore just absolutely awesome.
Other than work, what's the most exciting thing you did? Tell the truth. Don't lie. Tell the truth about what you really did. Yeah.
I went to two games. I went to beach volleyball, and I went to gymnastics. I was supposed to go to skateboarding, but it was canceled because of the rain. The restaurants, where did I go?
Oh, please.
You know what? I was only there 3 nights. I didn't eat 2 of the nights because I was working. And then one night I went out with a friend of mine, Jimmy Golan. Do you know him from AP? No, he's AP based here, and he's there for 2 weeks.
Now, can I say one other thing on a serious note?
He says he liked me more because we were passing by restaurants, and one said healthy. I was like, healthy in France? Like, it can't be good.
So, in a moment which has nothing to do with security, I've mentioned this before. 30 plus years ago, I was in France. Oh, Jim was in France.
Yes.
And I rode on the TGV, which is Très Grande Vitesse, very fast speed. They had high-speed rail 40 years ago in France, all over the damn country. How many miles of high-speed rail do we have in the United States, Marjorie?
None.
And it totally, obviously it was horrible what happened. Luckily, no lives were lost, as you said, nor was it intended.
No,
when you're there, are you not incredulous about how pathetic our infrastructure is here?
And what happened
subway
was, the subways were incredible. They upgraded a lot of the infrastructure. I know there's lots of debate still about Boston 2024, but the city was able to focus on the deadline in terms, there was lots of in terms of transportation, in terms of city works. They all have their controversies. I know that's a given. And then, of course, the Seine River was cleaned up. It then got dirty. Then there were protesters, and there was rain. But they're in the water today, I saw.
For the triathlon.
Yeah, for the triathlon. And then, they closed the streets for the bike riding. You asked me at night when it stopped raining, I went to go see, just walked right past the flame. I don't know if anyone's seen pictures of it. It's like a circular thing. The flame is going up, and the balloon is sort of up in the middle of the air. I have them posted on my Instagram.
I just realized beach volleyball was by the Eiffel Tower, wasn't it?
It was in front of the Eiffel Tower. Like? It was unbelievable. I mean, you sort of walk in, and then you look up, and you're in a beach volleyball set. Court and spectators, and then you look up, and there's the Eiffel Tower. You can see all these images online, or you can check it out because I posted everything. But anyway, as you know, I was a fan of bringing it here. I do a lot of work in mega event planning. There's been nothing like that, but my client was involved with the Olympics, so that was why I went originally. But then got these tickets, so I was lucky.
So moving on to something that is very, very scary. The Hamas top political leader was assassinated in Iran, and Iran vows revenge. And people obviously are worried about escalation here. What's the story?
So if anyone knows how this unfolds, they're lying. This is a big deal, because what you have to remember is in about an 18-hour period, Israel goes after and succeeds on a Hezbollah leadership or leader in Lebanon with a strike, and then moves into Iran with a strike against Hamas's political leader. I'll get to that in a second.
Who's leading the ceasefire negotiations?
Right. I mean,
for
it is,
Hamas.
and that's also would be viewed legitimately so. It might be justified. I'm not getting into that. Legitimately so as an attack in Iran. It's embarrassing for the Iranians because it was the same day as the inauguration of their new president, who was viewed as possibly a better partner for us in the long-term negotiations that we've always seemed to be having with the country. That's all off the table. I don't think I think this delays a ceasefire for the foreseeable future. He was literally the man at the table. I'm not defending him. I'm just saying, like, if you can't do that and then also think that will lead to a ceasefire. It's a huge success, though. Like, I mean, this, Hamas leadership, going back, how many months is it now? My God, 10 months or 9 months. This tactic would have been the better response by Israel than
one by one and isolated,
and by killing, however many innocent Palestinians.
I know
that
what
are
you
going
mean when you said a success in terms of getting
it's
them,
a total
and I
success,
assume
and
all of us believe in the eradication of Hamas's leadership.
Of course.
However, this choice, I mean, beyond the Iran thing with a leader who may be more moderate than his predecessors vis-a-vis dealing with the United States, but to kill the guy who was the lead negotiator seems to be, it's a success if one doesn't believe in a ceasefire and hostage release, because you say it's clearly going to delay it.
It's going to delay it, and it is. I have to be honest
heartbreaking
with
for
you.
the families.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking for the families. It's heartbreaking for hopes for the ceasefire, and it's kind of a screw you to the United States. I mean, it really is. And I don't know if we had notice of it. I don't know if we knew. But
elaborate on that. Why is it a screw you to the United States?
Because they went after the political. He literally is the person in the room on the ceasefire. Okay. Now, maybe we knew it and we couldn't stop it, whatever. But, this idea, I mean, I think this exposes, again, the lack of influence, despite everything that we're giving the Israelis, about lack of influence we have with Netanyahu.
Okay.
Like, we sort of pretend like, if we give them all their arms, then we can control it. We haven't been able to control it in terms of human rights and humanitarian efforts. We've now walked away from that that port, or that, the ship delivery
out of the sea.
We've now, the negotiator is now dead, and we don't know yet to what extent we had notice of this, but this is not going to advance the U.S. interest in a ceasefire, in getting the hostages back, and stopping a regional war. And that's why, when I saw the alert last night at midnight, I was like, I'm just going to bed, because I don't know how this one unfolds. Iran will respond, but I don't know how.
Talking to Juliette Kayyem.
So, Juliette, I found the acting director of the Secret Service refreshingly candid, Ronald Rowe, telling the truth before. Apparently, the local law enforcement people that should have been on the roof where the shooter fired the shots that nearly could have killed Donald Trump and did kill a man and 2 spectators, they were not on the roof.
Injured 2 spectators.
Injured 2 spectators. They were in the building. Which he said was a communications.
This is the uninteresting part is every future witness before a congressional hearing should study what he did. I thought it was terrific from the perspective of his goal was to give the agency, which is in the middle of an intense threat environment with the election, a little bit of breathing room. And he was terrific. On the safety and security side, he took ownership of what happened. He talked about embarrassment. He talked about shame. He went and visited the site to see what happened. And my main takeaway from that testimony, because I watched all of it, was his statement about assumptions, about them challenging assumptions that they make about state and local capacity. By saying it that way, what he's essentially saying is, it's kind of the state and local's fault. We can't say that because we own this, and he was willing to. And we need to continue to work with state and local partners because we've got a heck of a 100 days coming up ahead, and then even after that. On the political side, he was awesome. Because I don't know, I've never seen an acting behave this way. He was just sort of like, I know exactly what you're doing. I'm going to call you out. Ted Cruz says, this idea that Trump should get the same security as Biden, and Ted Cruz thinks he has a gotcha. He goes, what's the difference? What's the difference? And Roe says, only one of them has their finger on the nuclear arsenal. And I was like, the Constitution is the difference. Now, they're going to change Trump's security. Last week when we talked, I know we talked about him not doing outside rallies. I think I saw something that said that he's going to oppose that. He's got an indoor rally, as we all know, in Atlanta because it's following up on Harris's. So we'll see what that's like. But it's clear, as we've long been saying, that the decision to give operational oversight of that line of sight from that rooftop to state and locals was the original sin. Everything else flowed from that.
Obviously, there's been a lot of border talk, as there has been for ages, but particularly since the Republicans think Kamala Harris is particularly vulnerable on the issue. So we're going to hear it a lot. And obviously, it matters to a lot of people, including right here in Massachusetts. We discussed it with Governor Healey an hour or so ago, and her decisions that are making some people unhappy here. This story, which I read last night in the New York Times, about the capture of El Chapo's kid and the other big drug cartel leader, where we have now learned that everybody knows who El Chapo is. El Chapo is obviously in jail here, one of the biggest drug dealers and the drug cartels ever in Mexico. His son and other kids are sort of continuing the family tradition. The lead opponent, I don't know the guy's name, is whatever his name is. And El Chapo's son,
Chapitos.
Whatever he is. They're all Chapitos. All the sons are. So one of the Chapitos lures the opposite. This is like the Sopranos, except better. Lures the guy to someplace in Mexico, kidnaps him. They outgun or out something his protection. They kidnap him, they cuff him, they drag him onto a plane, they fly him across the border into the United States, and while they're both in custody, obviously one of the Chapitos is trying to make a deal with the United States government so there'll be a lesser sentence for him. I think his brother has already been indicted. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. So originally when the story broke, well, let me go back. Apparently, the U.S. had no knowledge of any of this. They had been having conversations with Chapito III or whatever about him giving himself up for the same reason that you said, that if he gave himself up, maybe he would he wouldn't be on the run all the time. Those have been ongoing for 5 years. I was shocked with that number. They don't know specifically what's happening. Chapo's son, decides, I'm not I need to bring a carrot, right? Like I need to bring something. And so he decides to kidnap, I think it's Zambada Garcia, who is also part of the sort of counter or a different drug ring, literally kidnaps him, gets him on a plane. The plane arrives in Texas and the DEA is like, oh my God, like jackpot. Like they have no idea this is about to happen. Now, on the law side, the law is pretty clear, which I was surprised at, that how a person gets to the United States, as long as you can't, show sort of police misconduct or kidnapping by a U.S. official, it will be irrelevant. So he cannot claim, Garcia cannot claim, I was kidnapped, I shouldn't be here, you don't have jurisdiction of me. So he will be in a federal court. And now we think Chapo's son is going to say, I brought you, I didn't just bring you me, I brought you someone really good. It's freaking insane. There's a hearing today, so we'll know more.
So let me understand something about the law. I understand that if a private actor kidnaps him and brings him from across the border, the law seems to be it's A-OK. If the government had gone, our government had gone in and kidnapped him and brought him here, it probably wouldn't be okay. What about the middle ground? You mentioned this 5-year discussion. Now the United States is saying we didn't know anything about this. Let's assume we find out that we did know something about this, and we were working with little Chapito to have this other guy kidnapped. I would assume that taints the thing too, if we had any involvement.
It would be either guidance or permission. I'm just laughing because I think in Chapito is assume the little.
Yeah,
but you can
no, they don't look.
You can do
Teeny
little
tiny,
Chapito. We're going teeny Chapito.
Can I ask you a stupid question?
No.
I always ask this.
It's a hell of an intro.
Well,
yeah, exactly. I'm done.
I can't be the only person that wonders about this. If we legalized all drugs in the United States of America.
All?
Like Portugal, like Oregon sort of did.
I mean, these drug cartels are hell for a big part of the Mexican population. And that's part of the reason why we have massive immigration into the United States, because of the hellish situation in Mexico. People trying to go after their children or whatever. Suppose you could just buy whatever you want in the United States. It might be more expensive, like the marijuana is. I just wonder, if...
I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, fentanyl is coming through Mexico. I don't think you should legalize that. I don't think.
Well, you wouldn't. If it were legalized, you wouldn't be buying drugs with fentanyl in it.
Right.
Because people are surprised by the fentanyl.
But there'd still be a black market for people who want the high.
Well, there would, but the problem with fentanyl is people don't know what's in the drugs that they're taking. Yeah. So for the most part, anyway, and then it kills them.
I'm going to just be this is going to be so many double negatives, but let me say the data is not showing that the legalization of marijuana has changed the dynamic. So, there's still...
Wait, what dynamic is it not changing? Wait, what dynamic?
In terms of legal substances. People will look for a cheaper black market, and then maybe that it's higher, unregulated.
But the big drugs in Mexico aren't marijuana. I mean,
some of them are.
Other stuff.
Yeah, there's cocaine and everything else. Yeah. I'm not for legalism. I mean, I'm for legalization of marijuana. I think the disconnect between federal courts or the federal jurisdiction and the states is ridiculous. The feds should, basically see what's happening out there. But I'm not sure just ripping that Band-Aid would solve the problem.
I think it would be a big difference in terms of Mexican immigration, and I think we are hysterical about drugs.
By the way, there are a lot of other reasons that people are crossing our borders and the drug trade in Mexico.
That is a huge one. I mean, and the violence and the money that they make is ruling people's lives. So
we only have a couple minutes left. Can we bring up one other thing?
I think they should do that, Juliette.
Is anything good going to come out of the fact that many nations, including ours, are basically saying this victory for this murderous dictator, Maduro in Venezuela, is totally BS? And in all likelihood, the opposition leader, I think his name is Gonzalez, probably won 60 or 70% of the vote.
Yeah.
Is anything? Can anything happen?
I think it's remarkable. I mean, the first day I heard the State Department, they had their State Department language, like, we're deeply concerned. I'm like, deeply concerned. The exit polls were like 70-30.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Maduro
for the
said,
opposition.
Right, for the opposition, Maduro goes, no, I won by 51%. I was like, he's even embarrassed. He's not giving himself 55%, right? Like, he's like, okay, I'm going to do 51%. So I think it's the combination of the outside influence and that concerted effort of what's going on.
So you think there could be a real audit, an international law? You think that could happen?
I think you see
Great.
the numbers in the streets. You see the military changing. You see, sort of taking off their uniforms. You don't see. There's been no massacre to date. It's now 3 days later. I think he's lost support. I think, the first election, probably fair and square. The second one, I don't think the opposition, I don't think you can make such a clear case that the opposition won. In this instance, you can make an absolute clear case that the opposition won. The exit polling or discussions were out of control for the opposition. And let me just say, before it's like, oh, we're out meddling in South America, we have such an invested interest in this. Our massive immigration problem is coming from Venezuela. People are fleeing that
People that were
country.
flown to Martha's Vineyard in that
were
incredible
Venezuelan,
through
right? And that is because of the corrupt leadership that has turned a once amazing country into a place where people are starving to death. In my lifetime, that you would, when I was growing up, Venezuela was sexy and elegant and amazing to go to, and you would never think of going to Colombia, right? In my lifetime now, everyone goes to Colombia and loves that trip, and you would run away from Venezuela. That's how quickly these things can change. So I'm hoping that this transition can happen. I think that the United States has both a moral interest, but we have a very practical interest in getting involved.
I really hope you're right. Juliette, it's great to see you. Welcome home.
Thank you,
Thank
Juliette.
you.
I like your T-shirt
Thank
very much.
you. And
Says-
I'm on the road, so I will be calling in the next two Wednesdays. So.
It says Paris 2024 for people
Not
that can't
Boston.
see it. They're not Boston.
bye.
That's
No,
right.
you were wrong about that.
I was so not
I know you were
wrong.
wrong.
I
And
was
the
so
polls
not
here showed
wrong.
you were wrong.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
the polls, please.
Okay, we're done. Thank you very much.
Juliette
Goodbye. See
Kayyem
you.
is the former Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security for Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and a contributing writer for The Atlantic. Juliette has great pieces in The Atlantic. Up next, Jim Blakeley has supposedly perfected.
Excuse me, not supposedly. I own one.
Okay.
He has perfected.
Take that back. Take that modifier
Thank you.
back. He has perfected the ice cube. I didn't know there was anything wrong with ice cubes. I guess I was wrong.
You're going to learn in a minute.
He's going to join us next and tell us how wrong I am. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In 1974, about 7% of Boston public school teachers were black. As part of the desegregation mandate, the court ordered that number to be no less than 20%. 50 years later,
It's incredibly frustrating that we are still having these conversations.
critics say the district is still struggling with hiring and retaining black teachers.
The progress that we were promised and have been fighting for has not been realized.
I'm Esteban Bustillos, Boston busing at 50, today on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for our programs comes from you and the Adventure Park at Heritage Museums and Gardens. Zip line and climbing trails for all ages, 7 days a week this summer, rain or shine. More at myadventurepark.com.
I'm Boston Public Radio producer Aidan Connolly, and you're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. The mayor, as in Michelle Wu, will be with us on Tuesday next week at the library. We hope you join us then. Some people just can't stay retired. Jim Blakeley, former attorney, has spent the past 9 years solving a single but important problem: creating ice cubes that freeze perfectly clear, making you an absolute hit as the host of a cocktail party or at my house. Jim is the founder of Clearly Frozen ice trays. He joins us now to explain his obsession and hopefully the nuanced differences between the sound that clear ice makes as compared to cloudy ice, a clink versus a clunk. And by the way, after we speak to Jim, we're going to take your phone calls on your relationship with ice. And if you're as excited about this as I am, at 877-301-8970, you can start lining up now. Jim, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming in. So Jim Blakeley says, I would like to be the hostess of the most sublime cocktail parties ever. Tell me why I should have clear ice.
Well, clear ice is just a much more beautiful substance than cloudy ice. Most people don't look at ice, but once you've seen cloudy ice and compared it with clear ice, you realize that there's just a big difference. And clear ice melts more slowly, dilutes your drink less, and it's just a completely different aesthetic effect.
Okay.
Well, and also, doesn't it pick up the smell? Didn't I read one of your things or the Globe story about you that it picks up the smells in the refrigerator less frequently?
Yes, because ice is, clear ice is 100% ice, whereas cloudy ice is somewhat porous. So cloudy ice is able to absorb, if there's something with a lot of garlic in it in your freezer or something like that, you may get some of it into your ice.
How long were you a lawyer?
40 years.
And did you ever do anything nearly as important as a lawyer as you did in developing perfectly clear ice? Tell the truth.
No,
exactly,
absolutely not. Yeah, and lawyers are reactive, not proactive. Well, your client comes to you and wants your help with something, so you sit there twiddling your thumbs until they come along. I was never an entrepreneur, never expected to have my own business, never had any ambition.
And so, why ice?
Why clear ice, Mark?
Why clear ice? Well, it was a sequence of events. The ice maker in my refrigerator broke, and I was too cheap to have it fixed. So I was making ice with an ice tray, and one day I said, why don't I go buy a bag of ice at the supermarket? And I did, and I brought it home, and I looked at the ice from the supermarket was clear.
That's right.
And the reason is that it's made in commercial machines with pumps and wires and filters and all of this stuff, and a completely different process. But that's not what happens at home. What happens at home is your ice cube tray, a regular ice cube tray, freezes from all directions. There's some dissolved air in the water, gets pushed into the middle, makes a little cloud, and that's what you see when you look at regular home ice.
And directional freezing, can you explain what directional freezing, that's the centerpiece of your deal, right? Directional freezing?
Yes.
What does that mean in English?
It means that when, instead of freezing from all sides, my ice cube tray is insulated on the bottom and insulated on the sides, and it's open at the top, so the freezing occurs from the top down, which is sort of the same way that ice forms on a lake. Like the surface freezes first, and it freezes downward, and the ice at the top of the lake is clear.
So it sort of pushes out the impurities? Is that what happens?
Yes.
Do you have some here? Hannah brought some or something,
yes.
Our coworker. What do you got here?
First off, we can all look at a clear ice cube in a drink.
Now, Marjorie, tell me this is not wildly impressive. Tell the truth. This is fabulous.
Excuse my fingers.
Can we hold this up? Can I, or can Jim or somebody, whatever, can we show this? That's a little far away. There it is. Can you see this baby right here? This is a perfectly clear, that is a work of beauty. Are you not impressed? Tell the truth.
Well, mine has got a cloudy side.
Well, yeah.
That's really great there,
that'll wash off with it if you pour a little seltzer on there.
Okay.
Pour a little seltzer on there. Oh. This is actually, it's beautiful. It is, I'm serious.
Jim has one of your...
I do.
Yeah, Jim has one of those deals.
Okay, let's take a sip of this.
And they're larger. Does that factor into the whole equation?
No, that was just the first the first mold that I made. There's actually, I've got several of them now. This is designed for a drink on the rocks, like a bourbon on the rocks or something. There's also molds that make smaller cubes.
As you're now saying, we're seeing that. Okay, yes.
So there's some smaller cubes, and then there are these are spears.
That is. What do you do with that?
This is for like a tall drink, like a gin and tonic or something.
That is perfectly clear. Are you looking at this thing?
It's very pretty.
What do you want to say about that?
It's very pretty.
Thank you.
My life has been changed. I will never go back to my regular boring ice. You're going to tell us how we can avoid going back to our regular
Can I hold the? I want to hold the. Oh, that's why I want to hold that thing.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh my God, this is gorgeous. It is real. Is everybody as impressed with this as I am? Look at this damn thing here. Are you married to him or something? Well, that doesn't count. The people who are not married to Jim, are you into it or you're not into it? Thank you, sir. I really appreciate your good judgment.
Yay.
Okay, so do you know that, did you see the Bosch poll that 51% of America is ice obsessed? Marjorie is not ice obsessed. I am ice obsessed. I don't use ice in most drinks. I drink them either room temperature or whatever. But when you're having like a cocktail, having a clear ice cube, why am I as impressed with it, Jim, as I am?
I mean, I think you're just a sensitive guy.
I am. That's exactly what most people say about these things.
So you have turned this into a business.
I did.
There's a lot of demand for these clear ice cubes.
I did.
They're beautiful.
I did. When I started off, there was me and a couple of other products out there in the market. If you went to Amazon and typed in clear ice, you'd find a page with a couple other products, and both of them were started with like Kickstarter funding. These guys each raised several $100,000 to produce a product. I didn't do that. I was just sort of I stumbled into this backwards because I noticed the difference, and then I started looking on the internet and so forth. So in my kitchen, I was doing stuff like this. You could
insulating
see,
them.
I made a box out of foam, and I got this is a cake lid from the supermarket. I went looking for something to line the box, and then I bought an ice cube tray and punched holes in the bottom of it, and like this might have been the first prototype that I was working on.
Did anybody in your family say it was rather odd, this behavior on your part?
Yes.
They did?
Oh, yes.
And was there, I mean, this took you a while. Were there points where you said to yourself, this crusade that I'm on is never going to come to fruition? What did you say? How was this?
Well, I really wasn't I was just sort of curious about the process. And then I wish I'd been keeping some notes, because at some point something actually clicked, and I said, maybe I could actually make a product here and sell it.
What was the clicking point? What was the thing that happened?
I can't figure out when it was. Just somewhere in the continuum. All of a sudden, I was thinking, how could I get this made? And then I started looking into that. And eventually we went from this to, this is the official product. And it's again, like I said, there's a foam box, insulation on the bottom, insulation on the sides, and there's a liner inside it that holds water, goes to the bottom of the box.
Yeah.
And the tray sits the mold sits in the liner, and there's space underneath. And you fill the whole thing with water, and there are holes in the bottoms of the tray. So when the thing freezes downward, the cloud that would ordinarily be stuck in the ice gets pushed down to the bottom of the sockets, through the little hole into the water underneath. And what's left above is a clear ice cube.
We have to move your mic down. This is like a radio show.
I just put your clear ice cylinder.
And what was that like for you, Marjorie?
Well, I have a bunch of cloudy ice cubes already in here, and when you contrast them, it is.
You can look right down through the damn ice cube the whole way.
That's right.
It's unbelievable. By the way, here's a quiz for you, since you're the Iceman of sorts. Who and when, I looked this up this morning, created the ice industry in America? And I'll give you a hint. What he would do, I don't know how he came up with it, he would give away ice cubes at his bar as an incentive, and then people would be so excited when they took them home, they'd come back and buy ice. Do you know who it is?
No.
How do you know so little about ice? When you are, I mean, his name is Frederick Tudor, of course. 1806, he started that.
Really?
And you continued it in 2024, obviously, 200 and some years later.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. By the way, we're going to take your calls in a second at 877-301-8970 about whether you're as impressed by this as I am. You can be honest. And two, how much does ice mean in your life? How much does ice mean in your life, by the way?
I love cocktails, so I am a big fan of ice. But frankly, I didn't ever realize that there was this difference. I just got ice out of the ice machine in the refrigerator, or I went in the store and bought it, and I didn't really think about it. But it is true, when you go and get ice at the store or at a liquor store, it's a totally different experience. Although it melts pretty quickly, but they're little cubes.
They're little ones, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you go to the ice machine, like in bars and restaurants, if these guys have ice over here, for example, they have a machine that makes it, but it's smaller pieces. They might be oddly shaped or something. If you're in a hotel and you go down the hall to the ice machine, that's clear also. But again, it's small pieces. You can't get a big chunk like this.
And the dilution thing is
still
fake, too.
perfectly clear
It's still perfectly
in my
clear.
seltzer.
Yeah.
So if people want to get one of the, you're ruining our whole set, but that's okay. Everything is
Sorry,
melting.
yeah,
No, it's fine. We
leaking all
don't.
over.
It's perfectly fine. How do people get one of these babies?
Well, they can look me up on Amazon. The brand is Clearly Frozen, one word.
Clearly Frozen.
Or I have a website, www.clearlyfrozen.com.
It's clever.
And yeah.
It is. And what? Wait, finish your thought. And what?
Oh, and so you can buy on my website or you can buy on Amazon.
And your
whichever.
website gives all the FAQs. It gives all the why this is a good thing, all the stuff we've discussed here.
Yes.
It's quite compelling, I think.
But it is weird when you think about it that no one came up with this before, because you would think that people would have noticed the difference between the ice you buy at the liquor store or the supermarket, clearness-wise, and the ice you get at home.
I think
Never occurred to me.
Well, it's really a sort of it began as sort of a cultish thing that's gradually moved into when somebody's trying to sell you a $18 bourbon on the rocks in a bar, they might say it looks better if it's got a good looking ice cube.
Well, cocktails are huge now. It's like a cocktail revolution.
Exactly. And there are restaurants that if you want to have an ice cube like that, you can either buy a 300-pound block of ice sculpture ice and spend the morning cutting it into pieces, or you can there are vendors who will sell you ice cubes. You can buy a box of a dozen ice cubes for $10.
Okay, we're going to take calls.
Why do they have an ice sculpture? Or is it clear or foggy?
It's clear.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. They come out of they make these big 300-pound blocks that come out of a machine that runs for 4 days.
But that's probably not going to fit in your cocktail glass.
It probably is not.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to take your calls in a minute, but before you go, 877-301-8097. Do you have a next act, or is this the deal here? What are you doing next?
I don't know. This is sort of keeping me pretty busy.
Are you making a lot of money?
I have to admit I'm making some money. Yeah.
How great is that?
It's pretty wild. It was completely unexpected. And I'm a retired guy. It wasn't like I needed this, but.
How do you feel about the fact that I put you on the show? I had to pay for mine. What do you think of that?
What do you mean you had to pay for
I
it?
bought one of these damn things. I got nothing free out of this whole nothing.
So I have one
Margie,
last question,
why don't you
Jim.
see if you can get one of these things?
You
don't believe in that?
Right there,
'Cause
clearly
that's like-
frozen.
Here,
I see it right in front of me.
Yeah,
thank
you.
But when friends come over to your house and have cocktails, do they notice the difference?
Yeah.
So are you very popular now as a
Well,
host?
that's and the license plate of my car says cubes on it.
Oh, that is horrible. Are you embarrassed driving down the street with him? You are. His wife is nodding that she's embarrassed. I don't blame her. Jim, I have to say, I am thrilled to meet you. I'm really proud of your work, and we hope to see you again soon. Good luck with this.
Great,
thank you.
Thank you
very
so much.
It is a beautiful ice cube. There's no question about it.
We're going to take your calls in a second.
Okay, Jim is the founder of Clearly Frozen Ice Trays, and you can get them at Clearly Frozen Ice Trays out on Amazon or Amazon. Okay, thank you very much. And it's important because they make a clink sound versus a clunk sound,
And they're beautiful. They're totally
that's right.
beautiful.
They're not cloudy, and that's very nice.
It
Okay,
is.
Jim apparently is obsessed with this topic.
I am
So
obsessed
we're going to
with
open
this.
the lines and see if anybody else is obsessed as well. You can explain to us why clear ice is such a hot commodity. Do you have bad feelings about your cloudy ice? Are you upset about clinks versus clunks? Why has designer ice become a universal American desire? You can call or text us at 877-301-8970. That's 877-301-8970.
In your life, and most people have a deeper relationship than Marjorie apparently does. And number two, how do you feel about the prospect of having perfectly clear ice in your drink? By the way, you're not playing games. You were impressed. Were you not impressed when you saw it?
I was very impressed. I hadn't thought
how
about
about
it
that
before.
long rectangular
Cylinder.
Well, it's not really a cylinder. Whatever
Sort
it
of.
is, it's unbelievable. 877-301 rectangle. Thank you.
Okay, here's Aja from Somerville. Loving this segment ever since I had the smoked old-fashioned at Eddie V's in the Prue, which has clear and embossed ice with their logo.
Yeah, that's big.
I have been curious on how to up my clear ice game. Bought some quilted giant cube things from Crate and Barrel, but it's not the same when the homemade freezer ice is cloudy. So there you go. There's
Well,
somebody
there's
else.
another point of view. Far Hill, watching on YouTube, said, I'm sorry, but this is nuts. When did GBH become QVC, etc.? Well, it is right now. 877-301-8097. This says small time entrepreneur who's filled a hole that existed in our society, and he's filled a great need, and we're celebrating him and the thing. Callie and Maynard, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, thank you for taking the call.
Sure.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Glad to have you.
Don't be nervous. No, it's okay. I was going to share that my brother-in-law has been doing this for quite a few years now, and it has made our drinking experience in the summer so much better. We do it up in a little town called Brooklyn, Maine, and he makes the ice cubes. He sets his timer every 30 hours because it takes quite a bit of time to do it. And round the clock during our whole vacation, he is making ice cubes for our gin and tonic. And it makes the summers extra special. He's also a lawyer, so maybe there's something about the lawyers there.
That's great. By the way, you feel, and you're exactly like I do about this. Callie, thank you for your call. Enjoy it. 877-301-8970.
Here is an anonymous texter who says, the next time Jim calls something beautiful or otherworldly, which Jim does quite frequently, the texter says, I'm going to remember what he said about the ice.
Because it is beautiful and otherworldly, and even you agree.
I think he's questioning your
My
credibility
judgment? Well,
on the beautiful and
he would be
otherworldly.
wrong. Dom in Waltham, hello to the show. Hello and welcome. Hi.
Hey, Jim, Margie. You guys are awesome. Just wanted to
Thank
say
you.
that.
Very
A couple months ago,
Yeah.
I'm a video producer, and actually a couple months ago, I got a call from Dunkin' Donuts, and we're shooting some of those new spiked coffee beverages or whatever that they were doing. And when I got there, we had a selection of all sorts of ice. There was silicone ice that was about.
Oh, Dom. Hey, Dom, don't go away. We're going to put you on.
Oh, he's back.
Oh, we're back. Keep going. Go ahead.
Oh, hey. Oh, you got me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, pardon me. Sorry. I was just
It's
saying
okay.
a couple months ago, I was doing a Dunkin' Donuts shoot for those new spiked iced coffee and iced teas and all that. And in the shoot, we had a wide variety of specialty ice cubes. And Jim, you would have went nuts in there. We had clear, actual ice cubes. We had silicone little bouncy ice cubes that I could assume was the same consistency as some sort of.
Oh, Dom,
Dom, we're
he's
losing
in and
you.
out
Dom,
again.
we got the gist of it, and congratulations on your commercial shoot, and call us again
Yeah,
soon.
the bad
Thank
cell,
you. Bad
bad
connection.
cell spot. Here's Nicole. Eating ice.
Nicole, our coworker.
Is this Nicole, our coworker?
I think it is,
Oh,
yes.
my goodness.
Yes.
Nicole, our coworker, says eating ice is a sign of low iron.
It is?
So when I was younger and kept eating ice and couldn't seem to stop, that's how I found out I just needed more iron. Still love eating ice, but she likes the unclear square ice.
Well, she would be wrong. By the way, the Mayo Clinic says craving and chewing ice is known as pagophagia. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Yeah. Well,
But it's often associated with iron deficiency, just as Nicole said.
Can I make it clear to Nicole and other people?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a clear ice cube, you're not required to eat it. Do you know that? By the
I
way,
know
you can
that.
put it in your drink.
You just look at it.
Hold it in your hand. Do what you want to do. Mike in Woodstock, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, thanks a lot. Hey, Jim, it's comforting to know that I'm not the only person obsessed with minutia. Your comment about this guy Tudor back in 1807 coming up with the ice cube.
Yes.
What did he do? Just pop him out of his frigid air?
That's an excellent
I
question,
have to
Mike.
say, I was hoping that no one would realize that while I said he was the founder, I don't know what exactly he found dead and how he did it. But according to some totally credible site, he did that. Are you into clear ice cubes, Mike, or no?
I really don't care about that. I mean, I'd eat ice out of a pond if I had to.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you for your excellent call, Mike. We appreciate it.
Here's Cliff in Winchester looking for a gift for someone who has everything.
This is perfect.
A clear ice cube tray. And then someone else says, as a bartender, I've had a function and clear ice has no function other than aesthetics. The shape and size has more function on dilution and flavor than clarity. That's Crystal.
Wait, what's that again? It has an effect on dilution because if it melts more slowly,
Yes, well,
your drink
Crystal
is
agrees with
that's
that.
a huge thing,
But she
isn't
thinks
it?
it's just an aesthetic kind of thing.
Well, it's not if it's not diluting as quickly.
And listen to this. This is the downside, Jim. Here's a texter who says, I install clear ice machines in high-end residential applications, and I take them out faster than I install them because they make too much noise.
Wow. So Zoe has been doing the research that I did not do about Mr. Tudor. What's this guy's name? Frederick Tudor, 1806. Massachusetts native Tudor's main ice harvesting location was, guess where it was?
Walden Pond.
Walden Pond. Spy Pond in Arlington was also a main location for ice harvesting. The Arlington ice industry was a big deal. Pretty sure the ice harvesting tools used all through New England were made in Arlington. That is the dreaded local angle, as you call it, Marjorie.
And here's one of the a practical texter who says, this is Joseph from Rhode Island, the people I make drinks for would never notice the ice.
Well, you know why? Because you work in Rhode Island. That's the bottom line. I mean, have you ever had a clear ice cube at a restaurant?
I don't think so.
At a bar? Never.
I don't think so.
You ever had an ice cube that's like embossed with the logo of the restaurant or the bar?
No.
Do you go out at all or you don't go out?
I do, but I not go to the same places you do.
Mark my words on this. If you've never had a clear ice cube and you have a clear ice cube for the first time at home with Clearly Frozen or at a restaurant or a bar, I'm telling you, you're going to notice. Laurel in Wayland, hello, welcome to the show.
Hello. So here's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't use ice. Am I echoing?
No, you're not. You're excellent. You're doing great.
Okay. I love iced coffee. I make coffee in the morning. I put some in the fridge, some in the freezer. I use frozen fruit for smoothies. And when people offer ice, I go, oh, high tech. That's so exciting. But I do love ice outdoors in the winter. It is mesmerizing. I go to lakes and brooks and streams to try to see it and find it.
That was actually a pretty beautiful call there.
Well, the
Laurel,
ice
thank you
sculptures
for
that we
it.
mentioned before when Jim Blakeley was still here, I see a lot of them near where I live, and they're all over the Back Bay for the.
Well, I have New Year's Eve here.
New Year's Eve
And they have them
celebration.
Revere. Oh no, it's sand sculptures.
They are gorgeous.
Revere Beach.
But it didn't occur to me. They are clear. They are clear, and obviously that works a lot better when you see the lights coming through the ice. It doesn't look so good when they're coming through fogginess. Okay, do you have anything else you'd like to say about
Well,
ice, Jim?
actually, our next caller has read a book about Mr. Tudor.
Oh, my God.
So I would suggest she should be
Karen,
on the show.
Also from Rhode Island. Hi, Karen.
Hey, Karen, what's
what do you
your
think?
deal?
Hi. I'm calling from North Providence, long-time listener.
Thank you.
I recently read a book, and I'm sorry, I'm in my car, so I don't have the title.
It's okay,
with me,
it's fine.
About Mr. Tudor, who began farming ice on lakes up in frozen lakes up in Maine.
Well, we think it's Walden Pond, but that's okay. Keep talking.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. All right. Well, thanks.
Wait, whoa. Why did you? The issue is not that you read that book. Listen to the name. I can't believe we didn't do adequate research for this. You know what the name of the book is?
What?
Ice King, Frederick Tudor and His Circle. That's the name of the book, correct, Karen?
You know what? It may be. I don't have it in front of me.
Whatever. Okay.
But,
So why
it-
did you?
it was
Wait.
written-
Why did you bother reading a book about Mr. Tudor? Exactly.
Well, I'm a big fan of buying books at Savers.
Oh.
And you get books that you would never find in a bookstore. This was written in 2003.
It was.
Just caught my eye. And I read it, and it was just fascinating.
Fabulous. Well, that is the book because it was published in January of 2003. Ice King,
Yeah.
Frederick Tudor, and His Circle. Hey, Karen, thank you very much for the call. What's your takeaway from this, Marjorie, now that you've been initiated
My
into
takeaway
the clear
is that
cube
the
world?
clear cube is not melting in my polar seltzer drink
Pretty
here.
good, isn't it?
And when I look in my little brand new Stanley Cup here,
How's
because
that
they're
going?
hip and trendy, the
I
Stanley
know they
Cups,
are,
as
I
you
know
know
that.
that.
They were,
I would
anyway.
say that they're not anymore.
Not as
Am I
much.
too late for the
No,
trend?
no,
I
it's
missed
fine.
it again.
You're right there. Go ahead.
Okay, that the clear cylinder or
Whatever it is.
elongated, a rectangular cube looks much more attractive than the foggy cubes.
Doesn't it?
So there you go.
You're going to love it.
I'll keep you posted. how
Again,
long
it's
it
Clearly
lasts.
Frozen is the name of the thing. They're great, and check them out and whatever.
Okay, we have been talking about ice cubes, obviously. Jim Blakeley from Clearly Frozen Ice was gracious enough to come tell us about why he does what he does. And you can get those online, as he said, at Amazon, Clearly Frozen Ice. Okay, up next. Naturalist Sy Montgomery joins us to tell us about this whale surfacing. You may have seen this picture of the whale surfacing, breaching, and capsizing the boat off the New Hampshire coast. She's also going to talk about Komodo dragons have these iron-coated teeth so they can more easily rip apart their prey, and other tales from the animal world. Sy Montgomery's next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Throughout Kamala Harris's long career, she's left an impact on many people, like her mentee from her days as San Francisco DA.
Being a reformer, an activist, an organizer, a young black woman, a teenage mom, all those things, I would have never thought that I would have worked for a district attorney.
I'm Elsa Chang. All week long, we're hearing from those who knew Vice President Harris before she got to D.C. on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and Eversource, committed to helping businesses reach sustainability goals and lower their energy use through energy assessments and custom recommendations. Learn more at eversource.com. And Commonwealth Shakespeare Company, presenting The Winter's Tale, Shakespeare's captivating parable of betrayals and renewed hope, is this summer's free Shakespeare on the Boston Common, July 16th through August 4th. comshakes.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie, and we're live at the library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Next Tuesday, we're back at the library Friday, but Tuesday at the library at 11, Mayor Wu will join us for an hour of Ask the Mayor. We're joined now on Zoom by Sy Montgomery. Sy is the naturalist and author. Her latest book is Secrets of the Octopus in partnership with Nat Geo. Sy, it is fabulous to see you, as always.
Well, it's always great to be talking with you. And talking about the Ice King, Howard wrote about that in one of his first books, actually.
Howard Mansfield is her husband, who's also an author. He wrote about the Ice King?
Yes, he did, in the Memory House.
Wow.
So cool. It's a great time to be thinking about ice.
Do you ascribe to the clear ice is better than foggy ice school of thought?
Boy, right about now, I'm just glad that I'm not in India where you just cannot put ice in your glass or you're going to be condemned to be sick for weeks. Okay. So I'm going to drink anything with ice in America and I'm grateful for it.
Okay. So, Sy Montgomery, yesterday we were talking about the greenhead invasion every summer, particularly up in the North Shore, horseflies, every place else, and how annoying people find them. And I wondered, because you are a very kind person and not really one to kill animals, even insects and flying ones, what do you do about greenheads?
Well, they bother Thurber, our dog. They land on his head. And anyone messes with my animal or my husband, they just better watch out.
So it's okay to swat them?
I think it is fine. If someone's trying to suck your blood, I think you've got a real good excuse.
It's a hostile invasion, right? Hostile invasion.
I'm actually thrilled because Marjorie was talking about swatting yesterday.
I've killed a lot of horseflies in my day.
Not enough.
Yeah, they hurt, man. They do. Hurt. They bite.
Yeah, they do.
And so I'm not fighting them,
Okay, all right.
So can we go from a very small, well, it's not an animal thing, to the largest of things? I'm sure you and everybody listening to the show has seen the amazing video of the humpback coming out of the water and essentially knocking a small boat over. Luckily, the people on the boat are fine. What do you make of that behavior? And hopefully you're going to tell us it's aberrational and people should not worry about it being replicated. Are you?
No, I mean, gosh, I'm glad nobody was hurt. This isn't the first time this has happened. And I know of two other incidents, one in 2020, one in 2015. This didn't happen on our coast, but the other two happened on the West Coast when a whale came launching up out of the water. The last thing you expect to see. Looks like the world's biggest pickle, just shooting up out of the water with his mouth open. And they, landing on a boat. The other two times they actually landed on kayaks. It wasn't even a fishing boat. The one that happened a week ago Tuesday, that was a motorboat. And both of the guys are fine, and their motorboat is going to be okay. They got to replace the motor, but even the boat is all right. So it's kind of amazing that somebody that large can land on your boat and nothing bad happen to you. In fact, some pretty cool things have happened as a result of whales landing on people's boats. Tom Mustill, who was the guy in 2015, a big pickle launched and landed on his kayak. And he ended up doing this years-long investigation of whale intelligence and whale language as a result. He didn't feel upset about it. He was totally intrigued. And the other, the 2020 incident, these two ladies were kayaking, and as soon as they realized that they were unhurt, and they shook the live fish out of their clothing, because it's basically on a bait ball, which is what the whales were trying to eat. As soon as they did that, they were just laughing hilariously. They thought this was just wild. And even people who filmed it, you can see sometimes the people filming it saying like, wow, is that ever cool? Not knowing at the time they're filming it that the person is okay. It's funny to see what people say when they're narrating their videos. But these two guys, they were fishermen. They were smart, and they were aware that the whales were there, and they kept kind of trying to back off. They didn't do anything stupid, but they said that they've learned their lesson, and the next time they think they're safe near a whale, they're going to move another, 50 yards away.
Well, Sy Montgomery, you know what I wonder? I mean, whales breach all the time, obviously, and I wonder what they see when they're coming up, because a kayak might be too small, but I mean, would they be aware of a bigger boat, or is that just not how their eyes are placed and they don't see them?
They probably just weren't paying attention to the smaller boats because, this is their food.
Right.
And, someone's between Jim and a delicious sausage. I mean, what's out, right?
That's right.
Well, Sy, on that note, I thought I had read, maybe I didn't, I thought I'd read that the whale experts, humpbacks in particular experts, were suggesting exactly what you and Marjorie just said, that there was no intention on the part of the whale to go after the boat. And you know what I thought of when you were talking about that? A year or so ago, we were lucky enough to have Michael Packard on, who was the guy who was in the mouth of the whale. David Abel, the terrific filmmaker and former reporter at the Globe, did that great film called Into the Whale. And my recollection of that, Marjorie, is their conclusion, and whale expert conclusions on the Cape, was the whale had no intention to put him in his mouth.
Had any intention.
He was just feeding, and Michael happened to be in the way.
But what I was wondering is, there's a lot of boats out. See, what I wondered about is, does it not happen more often because a whale can see the shadow of a bigger boat above them as they come up? That's what I was wondering, if the whale could see this boat. Not that they were intentionally trying to tip it over. You know what I mean?
I think he probably could see it if he was paying attention, just like when you're driving, you're capable of seeing that car on the left. You're not paying attention to it, so you might.
Because it would hit maybe an ocean liner or a massive, one of these massive cargo ships or something.
Or a whale, one of those boats that goes out of Provincetown and Gloucester and all those other places.
Yeah, that would be bad. But I think those would be too big to tip over, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure that they see that.
But the whale would get hurt.
Some cases, really big boats hit whales and kill them. And it's not that they can't see them, it's just that they can't get out of the way.
Talking to Sy Montgomery, this story...
upset you?
Well, it did, and I know it thrilled Sy, and I sort of... A Komodo dragon is one of the most frightening things in the world. I've never encountered one. I'm sure you've probably hung out with them.
I have not in the wild yet, but I have seen them in captivity.
Okay, and so we just learned recently in 2024 that one of the reasons that they're able to do what they do to their prey with such violence, I don't even mean that in a pejorative way, it's just how they are, is because we have just learned that their teeth are iron coated. Is that what the conclusion was?
Oh, it's so cool. But you know what? And they're orange because they're iron coated. But you know who else has orange teeth? Is beavers. And beavers have orange teeth for the same reason.
I didn't know that either.
Isn't that? Yeah, I think that's absolutely fascinating. It's because there's iron and not magnesium. Other rodents have very strong teeth, but they're not all orange because they have magnesium, not iron in them. But what a great adaptation, And they think that this may be how carnivorous dinosaurs were able to feed, that the iron kept their dagger-like teeth razor sharp. How convenient.
Is a Komodo dragon I should know this, is it the descendant of the dinosaur, or is
No,
it?
they're lizards.
That's a stupid question, I guess.
They are relatives. They're the biggest lizard in the world.
Yeah. How big? How big is the biggest?
Oh gosh, let's see. How long do they get? I know they can get over 5 feet. I've seen them over 5 feet long. They're pretty cool. They can run kind of fast. They can run like 12 miles an hour. And they occasionally do eat people, but not that often. And they'd rather not eat you. It's just sometimes it's irresistible. I was looking up when Komodos and people come into contact and what to do. And in 2016, there was a Planet Earth film crew that came back from filming dragons in the wild, and there was a Komodo dragon in their bathroom.
Wait, where was this? What do you mean in their bathroom? In the place where they were doing the research? What do you mean?
Yes. This was, I think, on the island of Komodo. And I mean, I have certainly come back from field work and found animals I was studying in my room. In French Guiana, I came back and I was studying tarantulas for a book, and sure enough, there were tarantulas right in the room. It was so convenient. But you don't expect to find a dragon in the bathroom. But and interestingly, on film, the Komodo dragon went to the bathroom in the bathroom as they were getting it out, showing that it was kind of frightened. But what a good place to go to the bathroom if you're in the bathroom. But they got him out just fine, and they just kind of lured him out with something tasty to eat. I think there's been very few attacks, and I looked in 1974 to 2012, there were only 5 fatal dragon attacks, and in each case, it was someone being really unwise. One tourist wanted to save money, and so didn't go with a guide into the field to see the dragons, and went outside like the dragon safe areas. I mean, save money, but they lost actually a child. It was not very. I know, horrors, but they're cool animals and they're super smart. And I've seen captive ones who you can. I mean, I don't volunteer to pet them on the head, but you could pet them because they do know the difference between you and something delicious to eat.
Did we already mention how big they can get?
Well, we asked Science, she wasn't sure. They say up to 10 feet, 300 pounds.
Yeah, that's a big.
Well, you know, also, one of your great admirers, our colleague Zoe, said they have a venom gland that prevents blood from clotting, and thus it makes the prey bleed out when they're attacked by a Komodo dragon, which is pretty incredible thing.
Well, and they also, in addition to that venom gland in the lower jaw, they have so much bacteria in their mouths that their drool is toxic. So a bite, even if you're not envenomated, can really mess you up just because there's so much bacteria in their mouths.
I think the takeaway from this part of our discussion is don't go out by yourself in Indonesia to check out a Komodo dragon.
Sy, this next story was so upsetting. I did not know how poorly dogs are treated in Turkey. But tell us about that and the efforts to adopt some of those dogs.
Yeah, this is awful. There are lots of stray dogs in Turkey, and it's kind of like cats on Malta.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of knows that there's stray dogs, and many people feed stray dogs. Many people will go out and first thing in the morning set out food for like 12 stray dogs who they know personally. And these dogs don't have homes, but they roam the streets. And it's a feature of many Turkish areas. And oddly, there's a ton of golden retrievers who are stray dogs, because about 10 years ago, that was the it dog to have. And then after COVID went away, everybody dumped their dog in the street. Well, what's even worse than all these unhomed dogs is that now the president, who's not known for being a particularly terrific guy, has announced this plan to get the dogs off the street by demanding that they all be captured and put into rescues that basically don't exist. Right now, all of Turkey's shelters are so overcrowded. If you saw even some of the best shelters, you would see these dogs are not even in individual cages with areas. They're just pens of dogs coursing around in some of these places. And the dogs, many of them are sick. My good friend, Krista, just adopted a dog from Turkey. He had been rescued from a rescue place and was at a rescue called Tattered Paws and Golden Hearts, where you can adopt these dogs. And his name is Mac. He's a golden. He's a beautiful fellow. He loves people. He just came last week, but he had a broken leg, right front leg that healed incorrectly. Half his tail was gone. He had a whole bunch of scars on his face, and he had a huge, deep, healed cut on his tongue. And that's just the stuff. No, these dogs get all kinds of diseases. It's really horrible. And now Erdogan has proposed these radical measures to just sweep these dogs off the street. And people are really protesting. And this, to me, is very moving, because Turkey is not known for necessarily being the most humane place for people. But the people will stand up for the dogs, and they are doing so. And I urge anyone who's looking for a dog, there's a lot of places here in the States that you can wait for months or even years to get the dog you want. I have friends in Santa Barbara who have been waiting for a year to get, they need a hypoallergenic dog, and they would take an older dog, and they will go to other towns, and they're just having trouble finding them. Well, the dog you want might be living in Turkey. So I encourage people to try to contact Tattered Paws and Golden Hearts, tatteredpaws.org, or Kairos Rescue is another one. And then there's another one called the Rescue House in Istanbul. But there are 4 million dogs just roaming the streets of Turkey right now. And they all deserve to have a loving home. And none of them deserve to be just removed from the streets and placed into these overcrowded places that might want to save them, but there's just no room.
We're talking to Sy Montgomery. Can we end on the dog front?
Yes.
There was a story on NPR. The first half of the story, I think I knew, and I don't think is new, that dogs can smell, since that's their number one sense. Who is the veterinarian that came on the show a year or so ago and said a dog is an animal with whatever, I can't remember. Okay, whatever. Virginia, thank you. Virginia Stutzman, thank you very much. I think it was Zoe who told me. And wasn't there a line
from Angel
that a dog is an animal with 4 legs and a nose or something far whatever. The nose is, she was far cleverer than that. I shouldn't have done that. Okay, so, but I think we've known, and tell me if I'm wrong, that dogs can smell stress in a human being. So answer that in a second. But I think what is new in this NPR story, not surprising, but new, is when they smell stress in a human being, even if they don't have a connection, a relationship connection with the human being, it then affects their behavior because they essentially internalize the stress. Do I get that close to right, Sy Montgomery?
Absolutely. We knew that they could smell stress, but we did not know that it affected them emotionally and made them less optimistic. There's this kind of optimism test, and it's actually been done on a variety of creatures, including bees, that you present like if it was bees, like here's a bowl of nectar over here. And then on the opposite end of the study area is a bowl with no nectar. They quickly learn that the nectar is going to be in the place it always is. But then if you put a bowl like right in the middle, are they going to investigate that? If they're optimistic, they will investigate it. If they're pessimistic, they won't. They'll think, oh, maybe something good is waiting for me after all. That's kind of the definition of optimism. And so this is a UK study, and they were looking at the smell of cortisol. They did 18 dogs of different breeds, and they had, a bowl of food over here, and on the opposite area, a bowl with no food. And then there were these maybe bowls that might have a delicious thing if you wanted to investigate it. And so they collected the sweat from people who had gone through a stressful test of giving a 5-minute speech with no notice, which I've had to do, and worse, a math test. They collected the stress, the sweat from these people who the dogs didn't know. Okay, so this isn't even your dog's friend sweat. This is just general sweat, and presented it to the dogs. And it made them more hesitant to approach the maybe bowls. So they were less optimistic when they were exposed to something that humans found stressful. And this is known as secondhand stress. And interestingly, I found 2 studies in which people were able to do this as well. That even though our noses don't approach the genius level of a dog nose, we also can detect stress by smelling it. And they've done this in 2 different studies showing with MRI imaging that when we smell the stress of people that we don't know, it goes right through the danger portion of our brain, the amygdala portion of the brain, that doesn't even go directly to the thoughtful part of the brain. It goes to the fear center of the brain, and we instantly react just as dogs do. But if you have a great sense of smell like dogs do, it affects them even more.
By the way, do you know that the humans that Sy is talking about, I read that study, that were able to smell stress in other human beings, after they smelled the stress, they peed on a tree. Did you know that? Thank you very much. Want to make sure you're... Sy, we love you. Great to see you.
Thank you,
Say hi to Howard. We'll talk soon. Be well.
We have been speaking with Sy Montgomery. It was very sad, very sad.
Sorry.
We're speaking with Sy Montgomery, naturalist and author. Her latest book is Secrets of the Octopus. Sy, thanks as always for joining us. Up next, we're going to open the lines for an early in the week Am I the A-hole segment. I am out tomorrow, but I'm not giving up the chance to talk about someone else's misdeeds. Today's prompt involves a waitress who made a rude comment and a customer who chose not to tip her over it. Who is the jerk? We'll ask you next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, The Police's landmark album Synchronicity is celebrating its 40th anniversary with a limited edition deluxe box set. But in a recent oral history for The Washington Post, which includes a Boston cameo appearance, reporter Jeff Edgers explores whether their most successful album also brought about The Police's premature end. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Newbury Court, a full-service retirement community in Concord, Massachusetts. Newbury Court is committed to creating active, independent lifestyles for persons 62 and over. More at newburycourt.org. And The Art Drive, a juried open studio tour, this Friday through Sunday. You can visit artists in their studios along the seacoast of Dartmouth and Westport. Learn more at the-art-drive.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm speaking quickly because we're short on time. We want you to get in quickly. We're doing this segment a day early so Marjorie can join in the fun. She's off tomorrow. It's time for our favorite segment of the week, Am I the A-hole? Marjorie said, who is the jerk? Because Marjorie gets upset when one texter says they don't like us saying a-hole. It's not who is the jerk. Who is the a-hole? For the uninitiated, there's this community on Reddit where people post supposedly real-life ethical questions. I'm sure this one's real. Inviting users to weigh in. We pick our favorite and invite you to weigh in at 877-301-8970. Here it is. Two friends go out to a restaurant, a place they frequent regularly. They order a couple of items, not much, and a soda, and ring up a very small tab of about $20. As the Reddit user tells us, the server, quote, scowled at our order, and as she collected the menu, says, next time, just order online takeout, okay? So does the server deserve to get no tip? Is she the a-hole for that rude comment? Or do you tip no matter what, at least something, and thus the customer is the a-hole for holding out even on a measly $4 tip? Now, we know what Marjorie's answer is. We know what mine is. We'll tell you anyway. 877-301-8970. Who's the a-hole? Or excuse me, Marjorie, who is the jerk in this setting?
The waitress or the wait
server,
person.
we call it,
Server.
yes. Yeah, why is that?
Because if that was an obnoxious thing to say to the customers, and why should they give you a tip for being rude and obnoxious to them? And when she put the bill down, the server, and collected this, she didn't look at them or say thank you or anything else.
She gave them the food?
She gave them the food.
She gave them the drinks? She worked, didn't she?
Here's the thing. You want everybody to get a trophy here, Jim. You could be a lousy server, doesn't matter. You got to tip the lousy server. You got to tip the good server. I would say...
You tip them less, but you don't give them nothing.
Well, why give them anything at all?
Because
and
the
maybe
person...
maybe you could say something. You could
maybe they
say
could.
Something it's that I'm not giving
you
a
a smaller tip.
Or I'm not giving you a
I'm
tip.
giving you a
for being
smaller
rude to
tip
me.
because you were rude to me, but I'm not giving you nothing because I know you did provide my food and drink.
Yeah, well, for those people who have waited on tables, and a lot of us have, I did for
So
almost
have I.
6 years, you get a lot of grief from people.
You do.
And you either decide to put up with the grief or be saccharine about the grief. I used to do that. That was a technique, The more obnoxious people were, the more saccharine and sweet you became. Oh, I'm so sorry, sir, that kind of thing. But you put up with that grief because you want to get a good tip from people.
So let me ask you a question. When I was a busboy and a waiter in the Catskills, I told you ages ago, this one woman was driving me crazy. Like really demanding a customer, really demanding. She was staying there a whole week. And
You told me what you did.
Well, no, not that one. That one
was
we're not.
pretty bad.
We are not telling that one on the air.
That was much worse than not
Okay,
getting a
we're not
tip.
talking about that
Okay.
one. We're talking about this one,
You
where
brought it
then
up.
she said to me, because she was really a pain in my neck, she told me 42 times she was on a salt-free diet. And so what would any self-respecting server do?
Dump salt all over her food.
I dump salt all over her food.
You're
Now,
really-
do you think that's a problem?
I did think it's a big
You wouldn't
problem.
have done that.
I would not have done that.
I think you would.
No, I would not have done that.
877.
Or the other thing you told me you did.
No, please, in all seriousness, that was a totally, Marjorie, that's
You have to
between us
say,
kind of thing.
You're off the record, Jim.
I did say it was off the record. In all seriousness, that story is not going on the air.
Peter
Thank you.
in Tompkin.
I'm a little
what do you
nervous.
think, Peter?
We're running out
I'm
the
not
clock
okay,
here.
We're running out the clock. Peter,
Go
what
ahead,
do you
hi,
think?
Peter.
Hello, guys. It's actually Thompson, Connecticut.
Oh, Thompson.
Oh, hi.
Okay,
Nice
thank
to have you.
Okay. This is an old story. I was in your adopted new hometown of Brookline many years ago at a bagel shop, bagel restaurant would be more appropriate, and had an exceedingly rude waitress. I mean, I asked her one time, was there something wrong in your life? And she said something that I can't say on the radio. So anyway, I left her a penny tip. I walked out of the restaurant. She came charging out of the restaurant, yelling at me, and threw the penny at me.
Well, I kind of like that interaction. That was the story about waitresses at when we used to call them waitresses at Durgan Park, that they would chase after customers who left them lousy tips. That was used to be down at Faneuil Hall, and throw the tips at them and scream at them. And that was part of the lure of going to Durgan Park, to have these really tough waitresses. Peter, that was a good one, though.
You don't
Thank
remember my parallel story?
God, there's so many stories. Jim,
There
you
used to
told
be a
me I can't-
Peter, you can please keep listening. There was a hamburger place in Central Square in Cambridge when I moved here. Hamburgers were 99 cents.
Okay.
The guy who was making the hamburgers was a real a-hole, and I got into a little, I got into a little thing with him.
Little
right?
kerfuffle.
So I gave him $1 for the hamburger, walked out, I took a bite into my hamburger. What was in my hamburger?
The penny.
The penny. Now, why do you find that funny? Why do you find that funny?
It's just as pretty funny. It was pretty clever on part of the guy who gave you the hamburger. 877-301-8970 is the number to call or text. This apparently is not that unusual. Linda from Framingham says, years ago I had terrible service, so I left her 2 pennies as a tip. The server is the a-hole here. And then the next person says, customer is always right, the server is rude. Amy in Wheelwright.
No one is arguing that the customer should give the person their whole tip. say you give a less of a tip, and you talk to the person and say, the reason I'm giving you half the tip I ordinarily would is because you were rude.
See, the only problem with this is if everybody has to share the tips, which I think is a terrible idea. I mean, it's fine to share the tips with the dishwashers and the people who bust the tables, but if you're a great waitress, you should, and you work your butt off, you should get your money, and somebody who's a lousy waitress should not get the same amount of money as you. I know you want to socialize all that, Jim, and have everybody. You want everybody to make the exact same amount of money, whether they're a good waitress or bad waitress. But that's the thing. I would want the server, we should say, server, not waitress, the server, if she earned a lot of money, to get to keep it. Ed in the truck, what do you think, Ed?
Hello, Ed.
Hey, hi, guys. Back a while ago, was it about 11 years ago, my wife and I, we took the bunch of friends that we were going to have in our wedding out to dinner. It was like a $500 dinner. And, I live in Connecticut, and the waitress was rude, so we asked for the manager, told him, and then she came over and apologized, but she was even ruder. So at the end of the dinner, we were going to explain to the manager that we were only going to leave a small tip. And he ended up saying, no, you're not leaving a tip for them, and you don't have to pay for any of the food.
Whoa.
Wow. I bet that's.
By the way, that is a good manager at caring about the customer. But did you notice what Ed said? Even though this server was abusive, what were you going to give them? A small tip, not no tip. Ed, you want to say the name of the restaurant since they were so good?
It was the Firebox. They're closed now in Hartford.
You know why they're closed? Because they're giving free meals to people who are complaining. Ed, that was a great story. Thank you very much for your call. 877-301-8970.
Now, here's Martha in Acton, who's been a server, a bartender, and a restaurant owner. Is perfectly fine, she says, to short a tip or, in an extreme case, leave no tip, but only if you tell the server and or manager why. I mean, that's probably what this person should have done, is just tell the manager why.
What would you do? By the way, you're one of the kindest people, I know you hate this, I've ever met. I don't think you would ever not give a tip to even a rude server.
If somebody was really rude to me, I think I'd say something.
And you give them a small tip?
No, I don't think I would.
You give them no tip? You ever done that your whole life?
No, I haven't.
Well, doesn't that suggest...
I'm waiting for the opportunity.
I don't think so.
Because I've never had a server be rude.
In your whole life?
No, I haven't. I mean, most of them are great people who are working really hard. A couple of texts here. Soliciting for tips has gotten to be much more aggressive post-COVID. Shannon from Brockton says she agrees with me. If that is truly how the server feels, then you need to be working in a different profession. Without people coming in and eating there, you would not have a job. And other people are saying rudeness does not deserve a tip, even from someone who says they generally tip a minimum of 20%.
Okay, let me ask you another question.
What?
If you're taking up, this is not exactly, but one of the facts is relevant or comparable, relevant. Two people take up a table. They order virtually nothing. Yep. It's $10 a head, but they're taking up a table for this server. $20 bill, a good tip, if you do the 20% thing, is for you give a much bigger tip. If the service was good, because you're taking up a table, it shouldn't be based just on the amount of the check. Is that correct?
Yes, that was one of the problems I could think with the server here, that she was ticked off that the people came in and ordered just a miso soup.
I would be.
And one of their classic little Japanese rolls, and the bill was like $20.
Right. So $4 for a whole table taken out of commission for, and those two people were there for 5 hours. Do you know that? Did you know that? 5 hours.
I think I've been in restaurants. I've been in restaurants with you where people came over and said, okay, get out of here.
Jared and you and I went to a new restaurant.
That's right.
We won't say which one, and they
threw
us out.
Of course,
it was unbelievable.
We were there for 5 hours. They had
we were there
enough.
a long time.
Jay and Sandwich, what do you think, Jay?
They did throw us out. Hi, Jay.
Hey, Jim, I agree with you 100% on this.
Love you for it. Why?
So here's my thing with tipping. I think it's actually not the correct name for this. This is their salary that we're talking about.
It is.
So people who work in restaurants, they earn nothing on an actual paycheck. Everything they earn comes from the quote-unquote tip. So if I go to the dentist and the dentist does a job cleaning...
Hey, Jay, it's got to be quick only because there's a horrible sound in the background. Yeah. But just wrap it up, if you don't mind.
Sorry, yeah. there's no reason in my mind to not tip somebody. That's their living. That's how they make their money.
You know, I wish I had said that. Jay, I'm sorry to let you go. It was a great call, but you have a horrible background noise there. It's their salary. It is their salary. It's not the tip is part of what they make.
Then don't insult the customers. I think that would be the wise.
Well, it's not like they gunned them down, Marjorie. They were rude.
She says next time, just order online or takeout, okay? Yeah. I mean, in a rude way. And when she put the check down, she didn't even acknowledge them. So I think she was probably in the wrong business. Julianne Cape Cod says, I was a server for many years. It is considered proper etiquette to leave a rude server no tip or only a penny to make the point.
Here's an interesting, wonderful point by Justin Stoughton texting.
Yeah.
Listening to this topic makes me think of my parents who always had this argument. My dad always contended you have to leave something or else the rude server assumes you just forgot to leave a tip. So you're not really sending a message unless you say something.
Well,
so you leave a small tip, which does send a message.
I think I don't know if it sends a message. They might just think you're cheap. You know, they could think that too. Either you want to do, as Julie on the Cape says, leave a couple of pennies, and that really makes your point, or you say something to the server.
Was your father a good tipper when the family went out to dinner? My father was a horrible tipper. And for 3 years in his life, he was making a lot of money. He made a decent salary his whole life, but he made a lot of money for 3 years. And he'd take us out to restaurants. And I was a little kid, like my young teens, and I had very little money. I would often make an excuse to go back, honest to God, and I had almost nothing, to go back to the table to drop another $10 because it was so humiliating how little he'd give people.
My father was generous.
Was he generous?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
Alex from Wareham, thank you for calling.
Thank you for not saying my father went to jail. Every time I mention my father, Marjorie says he was incarcerated, which he was not.
I mean, it explains a lot.
He was not incarcerated.
Jim has personality problems, and if you knew about his childhood, you might have.
Well, that is true, but he was not incarcerated. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Alex from Wareham, what do you think?
Hey.
Hi. I was in that business for 25 years.
Yeah.
I spent the first 5 on the floor. Later on, I had a situation where I went out to eat. The waiter was horrible. And so he couldn't turn around and say that I was cheap. I took a rather generous tip in currency and burned it in front of because I wanted to make the point.
Can I tell you something? That is a good one. Quite dangerous, but that is a really good story there. Alex, thanks for your call. An anonymous texter says the server was probably having a bad day. So do you get paid less because you had a bad day at work? And Jamie, our colleague here, is commentary on that. Can you imagine if we got paid less if we had a bad day at work, Marjorie?
We don't want to go that far.
We'd be really
we do not
in
want to
trouble.
Go that far. Absolutely not.
What do you think about burning? I mean, assuming you don't want to burn stuff because it's dangerous. That is a really good demonstration.
Your point across.
You sort of hold the cash up kind of thing, wave it, and then set it afire.
Peter in New Bedford, what do you think, Peter?
Hey, Peter.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Excellent. Jim, Marjorie, big fan. Love you guys.
Thank you very much.
I've been to school of thought that the server is the a-hole. You know, having worked in sales for quite a few years, she's got to think long term. She's permanently just lost a customer. I know if I was them, I wouldn't want to come back. And who's to say that she won't be back, or they won't be back in a few weeks and run up a larger tab?
Well, I'd say they're probably not coming back because she was so unkind, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, before ordering online was such in vogue, I mean, what were people supposed to do back in the day? You know, before people ordered online, were they just not supposed to eat?
Hey, Peter, thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
This is Drew in Rhode Island. I've been a service industry worker for 18 years, gotten bad tips, having provided excellent service. In these situations, I give the tip back and say, clearly you need this more than me. I hope you have enjoyed your experience with us.
By the way, I did that.
That's a good one.
I did. You ever do that? I definitely did that at Grossinger's. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Small money, let them keep it.
And several people are making the same point. If you leave a no tip, the server might think you forgot, or you'd be better off leaving a couple of pennies or even 10 cents and write on the bill.
Well, penny is almost lowering yourself. You know, the words of Michelle Obama, when they go low, you should go high. That's going lower, don't you think?
Well, this person suggests leave 10 cents and write on the bill, you were rude, you do not deserve a proper tip.
Wow.
How about that, Jim?
How about that, Marjorie? You never had a rude server your whole life. On planet Earth, you never once had a rude server.
Well, I don't remember somebody telling me I should have just ordered takeout. I mean, that's pretty aggressive, don't you think?
That's really, you offended?
I never had that situation, but this is what the situation was in this story.
See what's in this cup?
Yeah, sure. I'm my cup too.
A clear ice that is not melted.
It is not It is not melted. That is pretty incredible.
great,
It's been
isn't
here
it?
like 45 minutes.
We're done, Marjorie.
We're done.
We're
okay.
done. That's why I said
Thank you
that.
very much for listening to Boston Public
Thank you.
Radio. We're going to be back tomorrow. Well, I won't be back tomorrow, but Jim will be back tomorrow.
I will.
Who's with you tomorrow, Jim?
Andrea Cabral.
Andrea Cabral will be back with Jim tomorrow. You're going to be